So then you can't vote on the minutes. We have Commissioner Corcoran, you'll be sitting for Commissioner Barrett's, Commissioner Ford for Commissioner Kennelly, and Commissioner Grauer for Commissioner Francis. Okay? So, so everyone here except Commissioner Lessie on the minutes. So can I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner McAleese. Second? Second by Commissioner Noonan. Everybody have a copy of those? I looked and they all appear to be in order to me.
Yep, I didn't see anything out of order.
Everybody else? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Minutes are adopted unanimously. Next is new applications to recommend a public hearing. Everyone present is on this item. 569 Commerce Drive, special exception application of CLS Investments, Inc. for a used car dealer license in conjunction with an existing livery service in the designed industrial district.
Just as the item says, Mr. Chairman, this is an existing limousine and taxi facility. They're looking for a used car license not to sell to the general public, but so they can sell and buy the vehicles for their business. It does require a special exception, therefore public hearing.
Thank you. Public hearing is required. Can I have a motion? Motion to approve by Commissioner Corcoran. Second by Commissioner Ford. Public hearing is required. Any other comment, questions for staff? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, it's moved to public hearing unanimously. Next is old business, 1427, 1443 Kings Highway, compliance application of John and Timothy Philbin for a 24-unit residential development pursuant to Section 830G of the Connecticut General Statutes in the Design Commercial District.
Okay, you have five. I don't know who's eligible to.
So everyone, Commissioner Lessie is not up to speed, so he's sitting out on this one. Everyone else was either at the hearing or listening to the tapes. Okay?
Very good.
So everyone except Commissioner Lessie.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, this proposal is for 24-unit residential development comprised of all one-bedroom units. There's a small lobby at the ground floor level with 3 floors above grade level parking. The total area proposed is 20,127 square feet, with units ranging in size between 648 and 743 square feet. 8 units are required to be set aside as affordable units. The Affordable Housing Committee reviewed this application and offered a letter of support, noting the following reasons. There is a need for more affordable housing and workforce housing in Fairfield. Given the proximity to mass transit, the site is well suited for this development and would provide additional housing options for the community. The site makes good use of the site and fits, the building makes good use of the site and fits well with the character of the area. The applicant will make one of the affordable units ADA compliant, and the applicant has also used the model affordability plan and reporting requirements promulgated by the Affordable Housing Committee. The committee did raise an issue in concern regarding the total number of parking spaces. That was also an issue that was discussed by this commission as well during the hearing. The plan proposes 24 parking spaces, 1 for each unit. And while the applicant notes that 1 space per one bedroom unit is the same standard which is found in our transit-oriented development park regs, I note that the developments under those requirements also assume that there's going to be at least a 30% commercial component, so there will be other parking supplied in addition to the residential component in those developments. But having said that, it was discussed during the hearing that parking is prohibited on the streets adjacent to the development, so on-street parking in front of this building is not an option. But parking is permitted on nearby Rhode Island and New England avenues. And after-hours parking could also be found at the train station parking lot to the south. The applicant indicated they do not intend to assign spaces to a particular unit, nor would such an arrangement be enforceable by us. It would really be a matter strictly of the landlord-tenant issue with respect to that. Also brought up as a recommendation is that the affordability plan should specifically identify which units are to be set aside as affordable and which unit is to be ADA compliant. And the applicant agreed to such a condition if this project is approved. As this commission is well aware from previous applications, set-aside developments pursuant to Section 8-30G are not based on whether or not there's compliance with the standards of our own regulations. The standard is, in order to deny such an application, there must be an identified public interest in health or safety that clearly outweighs the need for affordable housing, and further, that the application cannot be modified to preserve that public interest. That is all I have at this point, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. So Commissioner Alessi's off this. Commissioner Francis is back. And so I think Commissioner Grauer, you're relieved. But
I think we have 7 with Commissioner Francis.
so we had Corcoran for Barrett's, Ford for Kennelly, Grauer for Francis.
No, Frank, he could do me.
And now Grauer's on for Alessi.
He could be on for me.
Yep. Now Grauer's on for Alessi. All right, good.
He's
I'm
back
glad.
in.
Like musical chairs. Very good. Okay, so thanks. Can I have a motion? Commissioner Corcoran? Motion to approve by Commissioner Corcoran.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Noonan. Thank you. Commissioner Corcoran?
I like this proposal. It's in a good location. The building is a little nicer than some of the others we've seen. And I think it's good that it's being done by a local developer. I have one comment. It's not really a concern, but in the discussion of the parking last week, I mean, one obvious problem I can see is that if there's no identification of who has a right to park there, that people at the train station could park there. And so, I mean, there was a discussion of where do guests park and so on, but if there's no control, there'll be a problem with that.
Yeah. Well, we can talk about that in a second. Commissioner Noonan?
I felt it was a good application, considering and even notwithstanding the fact it was under 830G, to even think of the standard that staff just mentioned. I don't think to deny it we would meet that standard. The only issue that really seemed to be an issue was parking, and I think the off-street parking, well, the alternatives were sufficient to satisfy that, to not outweigh any disinterest. Excuse me, to not be an interest that would outweigh this affordable housing. So, all in all, it was a good application, particularly in considering that it was an 830G application.
All right. Anyone else before we start talking about parking? No, Commissioner Grau.
I have one concern. He's got one handicap built-out unit, one handicap parking space. If that handicap unit isn't rented to a handicapped person, what do we do with the handicap spot? Because in theory, no one else in the building is allowed to park there without a handicap sticker, and that leaves them with 23 parking spaces, not 24.
Well, I mean, a handicapped space is restricted to, those with a handicap placard. I think that as a general proposition, the issue that you mentioned, Commissioner Corcoran, about others parking on the private property is something that, every private landowner, commercial or residential, has to deal with. If there are non-residents and uninvited guests, that is, sort of unauthorized vehicles, I think it's incumbent upon the property owner to police that. Posted signs, authorized vehicles only, unauthorized vehicles subject to towing. I think we could impose a condition that those signs be posted. But I don't think that, well, first of all, imposing a condition of approval on some sort of parking implementation, I don't think rises to the level of the standard under 830G. I mean, we have made suggestions in the past to other 830G applicants, even where we're not legally entitled to do so. I don't know what there is to do with the 24 spaces. I don't think it rises to the level of public safety. I think there is on-street parking, adjacent for overflow. And I think that the handicap space has to operate as a handicap space. You know, it's tight, there's no doubt, but I don't see an alternative that we could impose that would be consistent with the, you know, our duties. I'm certainly open to hear any other suggestions that folks might have. Commissioner Noonan?
Just as a aside, I recognize that the motion put forth that it include the conditions from staff.
Right.
That
I
was
gonna
my,
get there. Yeah, so Commissioner Corcoran revises his motion to approve with conditions that the affordable housing plan specify on the floor plan and in the affordable housing plan, the ADA compliant units and also those units which are the affordable units.
sorry to interrupt on the train of thought with parking, but that crossed my mind.
Yep. All right, so you accept that modification? All right, and Commissioner Noonan?
Yes.
Yeah, concur with that. So do we have to, in that context, require the Affordable Housing Committee to approve Mark Barnhart?
No, I mean, we can certainly make sure that it complies with the standard, but I don't think that will happen in any
Anyway.
event. So no, I don't think you need to further articulate that. But I agree with you with respect to the overall parking situation. This is the lowest parking ratio we've seen so far on an 8-30G application at 1 per unit. They all are 1-bedroom units. But, you know, whether or not there's a handicapped unit, they're required to have at least one handicap space there. So, you know, there may be more than one person that lives there that has a handicap sticker with only one space, but that's what, you need one space, one handicap space for every 25 parking spaces. So if they had a couple more spaces there, they'd have a second handicap space, but we count those towards, you know, the parking requirement. But, you know, it's going to be in some measure a self-regulating proposition as to the marketability of this facility if people have convenient parking or not. But I tend to agree with the statements made that, yeah, it may be a matter of convenience from time to time, but I don't think it rises to a level of public safety that outweighs the need for affordable housing in any case.
Have we in the past imposed requirements of signage, you know, unauthorized vehicles towed? No.
I think, again, my opinion on that would be that it's going to be incumbent on the owner or whoever's managing the building to take care of that. If they feel there's a need for that, they will do that. I don't think it's really incumbent on us to regulate for them how they're going to manage unauthorized folks from entering their property.
Yeah. No, I think
One question,
that's
there's
right.
no cost for the parking, right? No additional cost, it's built into the rent.
That's correct. I mean, I didn't see anything in the materials or in the affordable housing plan or anything that would indicate any additional fee for parking.
So you'd think the 24 residents would each be entitled to a space, really?
Yeah.
They could choose to assign spaces, but I don't think we want to be in a situation to dictate to them whether they do that or not, because we can't really enforce that. You know, we're not going to be in a position if someone comes home at some point during the day or night and someone's parked in their space, that's not an issue that we're going to take a zoning enforcement action on.
Right. And it's certainly not something that is implicates you know, public health, safety, and welfare.
Right, it's going to be a landlord-tenant
Right.
issue on a going-forward basis.
Yep. So I think the limit of our conditions of approval are modifications to the affordable housing plan that we've indicated. Otherwise, it's a good plan. You know, it's a nice building. It's a great spot for it. Anyone else have any more comments? Okay. Ready to vote? Vote in favor is to approve with conditions. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? All right. The item is approved with conditions unanimously. Next item is compliance applications. One item, 954 Fairfield Beach Road, coastal site plan application of Joe Provenzano pertaining to the construction of a single-family dwelling in the Beach District.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, this is a single-family dwelling. This is on the creek side of Fairfield Beach Road. It's not on the Waterwood side. There was a house on this property. It's been gone for a number of years, but this house would replace a house that was there for many years. In your packet, you have the plans. I'm not going to go through that in great detail. You do have a referral from the Department of Environmental Protection, Energy and Environmental Protection, that finds that they don't find any inconsistencies with the proposal. They feel it's consistent with the coastal area management policies as was outlined in the staff report that you also received. We also did receive a letter. We have two applications this evening that have had some comment from the Flood and Erosion Control Board. We did receive a letter from the Flood and Erosion Control Board indicating that they are offering no comments on this particular application since it's not on an area, it's not a beachfront property, nor is it it's going to have any influence on flooding and erosion. It's our view that the proposed plan is consistent with the coastal area management policies.
Very good. Thank you. So, let's see now. Commissioner Alessi's now sitting, so Commissioner Grauer, you're off. Very good. Thank you for the summary. Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Alessi.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Noonan. Commissioner Alessi?
I mean, I really know straightforward compliance issue. Nothing really striking out of me right now, so I have no reason not to approve it.
Okay. Commissioner Noonan, any comments? No? Okay. Commissioner Corcoran?
I noticed there was discrepancy between the floor plan and the elevation, minor.
Okay. Where is that? Which page?
Which is it?
The very top floor, the left side?
Oh, yeah, okay, good. We're supposed to see this. Well, we can see it.
You're comparing it to A4 with the top floor plan? Yeah. And then the other floor plan is the rear.
You just see it?
I guess it's a common plan A4.
Commissioner McAleese, you see,
Yeah, I see what he means.
can you describe that for me?
If you look, as Mr. Corcoran said, if you look at the rear elevation, the top floor on the left side, there's a railing that would indicate probably some kind of mechanical area, maybe hiding it, but it's not on the plan. There's an access door. The plan reads like those units might be some kind of weed wall, kind of attic space or something, so I don't know. If we could just get some clarification.
Yeah, those appear to be mechanicals that are going to be mounted on the flat roof adjacent to that dormer. So the railing is required for someone, if they're servicing that equipment, that they have to have a railing.
Yeah, it's just not on the plan.
On the side as well, or is there any other elevation as well? Should. You may not see it, depending on what angle.
Right?
Do you see where it's going?
I saw where he's talking about one, but I don't see it on the other. That's one I'm looking at.
Yeah,
But it's not showing on
Yeah,
the other elevation.
there should be a return on that railing on one of the side elevations.
See, it's showing it here. It's showing the railing. Rather than next elevation.
Would this be
On
also
this
visible
elevation,
in the
it's not-
one that's
you
labeled
can't see it.
right elevation? Should be. Where you see a sloped roof coming down.
That would be it.
I can't think of where else it would be.
Just open it all up, Chris.
Yeah, right here. That's good.
Yeah, I would agree that it should show on the right elevation on sheet A1, and it does not.
Showing on the left on
Yeah.
A2.
It's shown on the rear. Yeah. So if it is an exterior, it should be just that, whether it's exterior or interior, I guess that's the question.
Okay. So, Mr. Bueno, this is on for compliance with our coastal area management plan. Are we approving the,
Well,
I would make a motion, I'd rather change it to table.
I would say this, that the condition of where that mechanical is located doesn't implicate any coastal
Right.
management plan. From a coastal
Okay.
site plan review
we're off grade, it might.
standpoint, it has no impact, but the point is well taken
Yeah.
from Commissioner Corcoran that the plan needs to be revised to be consistent with the shoreline floor plan.
Revised and reviewed or reviewed?
No, I think we can handle that in-house. I don't know that you need to come back to you for that, but we can certainly make sure that that detail gets rectified. It's a point well taken, but I don't, in my opinion, it doesn't impact the compliance of whether or not this is
Right.
compliant with coastal resource policy.
yeah, and so in the context of our approval of the compliance application, my question is, we're not approving the site plans that are in front of us,
Well, this-
per se.
The site plan, yes, but you can certainly condition if you're otherwise inclined to approve it, is
Yeah.
a condition of approval can be that we rectify that detail on the plan before the permit gets issued.
Right.
See any other one? That was it.
Any other,
Want to go back and look?
no? Okay, no, it's good, it's a good catch.
I'll change my motion.
Amend the motion.
Amend my
to-
motion to have the site plan, I guess, reviewed by staff.
the condition of approval that it be revised to include the railing.
Yeah, the architect-
Yeah,
the
I'm sorry,
architect-
the architectural
architectural
plan,
plans.
sorry.
A2 and A4, so that they,
Well, it's also showing it like a door on one with and it's showing a window, I think, without the deck. I mean, whatever it is, it has to be
right.
set correct.
All right. So who was the seconder on that?
I do, yeah.
Commissioner Noonan, you agree?
I do.
Okay, Commissioner, so motion's been amended by Commissioner Alessi and agreed by Commissioner Noonan. Any other questions or comments on this? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The compliance application is approved with conditions unanimously. Okay. Next item is public hearing. First is 201 Black Rock Turnpike compliance application of RC Bigelow T. Inc. for a monument sign in the Design Commercial District.
So moved. No. Hesitation, sorry.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's David Wojtowicz with J.P. Franz and Associates, architects here in Fairfield. I'm here, excuse me?
Yeah, it's on.
Mr. Decker, maybe you
Mike,
could
not sure
just turn him up
if
a
you
little
use
bit.
the microphone.
It should be on.
Oh, there
Oh,
we go.
there you go. Maybe just a little bit closer.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks.
All right.
It's helpful for us that, on the microphones as well.
Sure. I'm here representing Bigelow Tea for their monument sign located at their driveway entrance. It's, you should have a package of the rendering of the sign. The lettering of the sign will match the building-mounted sign at a smaller scale, of course, approximately 6 inches in height, which would meet that roadway at 25 miles an hour there. That's where Black Rock Turnpike turns to 2 lanes and a much slower speed. The bigger section, we do want to keep the address letters large. Bigelow Tea entertained this sign a couple of times, but they wanted to wait for that development next door to see what impact that would have on their building. And as you can see, coming south or toward the Brewster Street, the new complex totally blocks that building sign. So they really have a need to get a monument sign at the curb, which is approximately about 14 feet off the roadway curb, and it is located on Bigelow Tea's property. There's a picture of the random colored fieldstone they would like to use with a blue stone cap. And there would be some ground lighting. The sign is located behind the existing guardrail system that's there. So anything on the ground would be shielded by the guardrail, the landscaping, and the topography there is very steep. So this is about the only location the sign could be placed. And in fact, we researched the site plan when the building was built in 1988, and this location is noted on that site plan for a future owner sign. The opposite side of that driveway is all the underground utilities going into the complex, so there's no chance of excavating the opposite side of that driveway. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yep. So we do, Commissioner Lesson?
I just want to commend you guys for Bigelow for bringing in the big guns this time on this.
They called and we showed.
Okay. The only question I have, and it might be for staff, is the lighting comply, we have to worry about any uplighting on this sign?
Buildings, yes, the side is no.
No, okay. And I have no other questions, and thank you for putting a very nice application together.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Question? Okay. So the lighting will be uplighting into the sign?
It'll be on the ground, pointed at the sign lettering only.
Okay. Will the
And it'll be
cap-
double-sided. Each side of that sign will have the same.
Right. And this is the only viable spot for this? Because there's, part of this application is also, I believe, to waive the setback for the sign from the property line, right?
Correct. I think it would be 10 feet and it's set at 1 foot behind the property line. If you know that topography there, I could easily show you that existing 1988 site plan. This was the only area allocated for any ground sign or monument sign due to the grading plan. There's just no other viable option for them.
Okay,
Right.
very good.
I'd just like to, you know.
Commissioner Lesson?
You know, looking at it, I mean, I drove by there last week, and that building does, the new complex does shield Bigelow, and I do think it's important, you know, for Bigelow to have a sign, especially because it's such a staple in this community. So, you know, that being said, I agree with what he said as far as location. There really is no other location coming down that road to put a monument sign.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Well, thank you very much for, you know, submitting a nice rendering and details of the type of stone and the location, exact location, and also in connection with how it would look with the guardrail and everything. Really, really appreciate that. Okay.
No,
Thank you very
for your
much.
time.
Is there any member of the public that wishes to be heard on this item? Going once, going twice? Okay. Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing on this item. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is 195 Fairfield Beach Road, coastal site plan application of George Coleman pertaining to a single-family dwelling in the A zone.
Good evening.
And, sorry, thanks. Give me one minute. Thanks. So I am going to recuse myself on this, on the public hearing on this, as I did for the initial application. Turn it over to
Attorney Fallon.
Vice Chair.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, my name is John Fallon. I'm here tonight with Jack Franzen. who's the architect for this new single-family residence, and I'm representing George and Katie Coleman, who are seated in the front row. They're long-time Fairfield residents. Indeed, Katie's family have been long-time and committed Fairfield Beach Road residents for over 65 years. Bill and Mary Jo Cornell are also seated with us here tonight. You may have recently seen an article in the Fairfield Citizen about Bill celebrating, I believe it was his 100th birthday. So, Bill, it's an honor to have you here. And, you know, Bill and Mary Jo deserve that applause, not only because of their longevity, but their longtime commitment to Fairfield Beach Road. Mary Jo, who's Katie's mom, obviously, was the very active and committed and time-contributing president of the Fair Acres Association for many, many, many decades. So this is an application that comes to you from a family, a generational family with very, very strong roots on Fairfield Beach and with a history that confirms their respect and their love for the beach and their committed significant time and energy to preserve and protect it, which is ongoing, as evidenced by this application. They have been and they will continue, George and Katie, to be great stewards with regard to this property at 195 Fairfield Beach Road. Their sole goal since day one in working with Jack has been to construct a new FEMA-compliant home that is sensitively designed to complement and enhance the area. That's why they retained Jack and took advantage of his talents in terms of coming up with a sensitive and architecturally, I think, elegant construction for this piece of property. Indeed, if you look at it, they're reducing the size of the structure from the current 9,688 square feet to 5,289 square feet. That is a reduction of 11.1% of building floor area. So the FAR will go from 39.1% to 28%. What brings us here tonight probably can best be summarized by a brief review of items that are in your record. I believe that you have received 2 letters from Richard Domachowski, who's the chairman of the Flood and Erosion Control Board. The first letter was dated September 22nd, and the second was dated October 13, 2017. In that letter of October 13 specifically, Mr. Domachowski indicates his support of the application that's before you tonight, and I quote, "We affirm our request that your commission approve the 2 coastal site plans before you." He is referring to both 195 and the item on the agenda behind us, 193. "Subject to conditions, including the existing dune be enhanced by elevating it to 13 feet. You also have an email from Town Engineer Laura Pooley, dated September 21, 2017, that requests that the proposed dune elevation of 11 feet be increased to 12 feet. You also have an email from Crystal Kellenberg of the DEEP, dated August 18, 2017, which, and I quote, "We have reviewed the application materials for consistency with the applicable policies of the Connecticut Coastal Area Management Act and find no inconsistencies with the proposal. We also have the CAM report by Jody Chase, wetland scientist, which is part of your record of May 4, 2017. And you have Mr. Biankowski's site plan review dated September 14, 2017, wherein he finds that the proposal is consistent with protection of the coastal resources as provided and required by the CAM statute. He goes on to say, or he says elsewhere in his report, and I quote, "The existing sand dune on this property is proposed to be enhanced and match the final elevation of the proposed sand dune at 193. This should be made a condition of any approval of the coastal management application." So, why are we here? And why are the Colemans, why has this application been taken to public hearing? Well, our plans originally proposed an elevation of the dune to 11 feet. Mr. Biankowski's report indicated support for that. Ms. Pooley's email indicated that she would want the elevation of the dune to be 12 feet, and Mr. Jumchowski's letter to you suggests and requests that the dune elevation be 13 feet. Some neighbors support the raising of the elevation to 13 feet, and from correspondence you have received, I would surmise some have not. Our position was well stated by Mr. Franzen in a letter to the Commission dated September 26, 2017, wherein he says, if the raising of the dune at 195 Fairfield Beach Road to 13 feet is a condition of approval, that is acceptable, as are the other conditions recommended, planting of beach grass and jute stabilization, and inspection after 1 year by town staff or town professionals to assure the grass plantings have been established. The bottom line is all these people with their generational roots in Fairfield Beach want to do is build their house. A house that is significantly smaller and more environmentally sensitive than the house that is there now, and that is an enhancement to the neighborhood. And everyone who has spoken endorses the Colemans personally and their proposal. So you got to decide whether you want the elevation of that dune to be 11 feet, 12 feet, or 13 feet. We abide by that. We don't care. We're here asking you to approve this CAM application, and in doing that, you'll be acting consistently with the record information that I've spoken to already, which includes Mr. Demchowski's letter. Since he endorses the application, he just suggests the dune height be 13 feet, and we're okay with that if you are. Ms. Pooley's recommendation, which had nothing adverse to say about the application, but she wants the dune height to be 12 feet, we're okay with that, if that's what you want to do. The DEP, which has said, and I quote again, reviewed the application for consistency with applicable policies of the CAM Act and find no inconsistencies with the proposal, and your own staff, Mr. Biankowski's report, finding the same thing. So we understand that the matter of dune protection and flood protection is an important one in this neighborhood. That does not have to be told to the Colemans or the Cornells, who have spent, as I said, almost 70 years down there, and we will defer to your expertise and your discretion, but we ask you to approve this application with the conditions that have been suggested by staff and by Mr. Jumchowski, and it is for you to decide what that elevation of that dune should be. We don't have a dog in that fight, we just want to build our house. Would you please answer any questions you might have?
Attorney Fallon, why are you asking for 11 feet?
We weren't asking for 11 feet. The original elevation as prepared showed 11 feet. But, you know, we have no objection to the dune being elevated to 12 or 13 feet.
Okay.
Where is the 11 feet provided from? Is it a FEMA standard, or was it?
I believe it was consistency with the dune adjacent that was there. In other words, we were just trying to be consistent with the adjacent dune.
193 or the one?
193, yes.
193 is 11, right?
Correct. So we just said, okay, and we, by the way, we didn't do that arbitrarily. There's nobody more diligent that I'm aware of than Mr. Biankowski in terms of reviewing and focusing applicants in these CAM applications, and we worked with staff in that regard. But again, 11 feet, 12 feet, 13 feet, we accept your wisdom. We just want to build the house.
Do you know if the other adjacent properties are all at 11 feet?
I do not know that.
You just know.
Mr. Biankowski may know that, Mr. Wendt may know that.
Mr. Wendt?
Okay.
Jim Wendt for the record. Since we have two adjacent properties undergoing redevelopment at the same time, we wanted to be consistent in our approach to what our recommendation was going to be. Our main concern going into the design of these homes was that there wasn't encroachment further waterward into the existing dune profile that's there now. That was the first most important aspect to us, that we didn't want to interrupt the dune profile by digging into it for foundation, so neither home encroaches into the dune more so than the existing homes. And they've been, the design professionals involved have been coordinating with each other in that regard. We did get a recommendation from the Flood and Erosion Control Board. There is a representative, I believe, of that board here tonight to explain what their position is on the matter, which may be helpful to hear, and then whatever public input thereafter follows. So I would recommend that would be the next step. If there is, I know Mr. Stearns.
Are we going to do, I guess we do it on the public
I
comment.
would recommend to at least let that gentleman make his presentation on behalf of the Flood and Erosion Control Board, and then...
Well, we should do that in the public comment, I would assume. Do you have any other questions?
Quickly, I guess for Mr. Wendt, if we approve it at 13 feet, are we opening up the Pandora's box in terms of, the next door neighbor is 11, and I think Penfield is there as well, so I don't think we have a...
Well, the recommendation from the Flood and Erosion Control Board is to tie it into the elevations of the adjacent Rickards Beach, which is a dune area that lies between Penfield Pavilion and this particular house, and then to carry that across to 193. Some folks that we've heard of are concerned that they feel that that is going to divert water around the dune. Our position on that is that a higher dune profile is going to protect the neighborhood from a lesser storm event, that there will be less water encroaching into the neighborhood than if the dune is at a lower profile. Dunes tend to absorb wave energy rather than to reflect wave energy, like a hard structure, like a seawall, that can have a negative impact on adjacent owners. These properties are all parallel with each other, so the wave is going to come in kind of a parallel, and the higher elevation is going to stop it at some point, but there are lower elevations further down the beach where that wave is going to, come past that. I don't believe that that's going to create a measurable difference in how much water ultimately enters the neighborhood.
Well, on one side, the dune ends at the beach club, correct?
No, there's another adjacent residential property between 193
Right,
and the
there's
beach club.
another house there and then the beach club.
Correct.
And on the other side, we have Rickards Beach before we get to Penfield, correct? Okay.
So when you're looking beyond the two, I mean, I'll use both of them, 195 and 193. When you look on either side, they're going to be if you took 11 feet for now, they'd be consistent, the dunes.
11 feet would be consistent to the property to the east, which is the third residential property not subject to this application, but to the west towards Penfield, the adjacent town property, dune profile is actually higher, which is why the Flood and Erosion Board is looking to match that.
Okay, so they're trying to
higher
match
profile.
Penfield.
The Rickards Beach profile,
Rickards, sorry.
which is higher than the existing.
And that would be 13 feet.
Correct.
Commissioner Francis?
And this is also a FEMA V13 zone, which is 13 is your base flood elevation.
And the two homes we approved last year to the west of Penfield, do you happen to know if they are 11, 12, or 13? I don't remember.
The house immediately adjacent to Penfield, I think there's a seawall there, so there's not a natural dune profile on those properties immediately to the west.
Any other questions for Mr. Wendt? Attorney Fallon? Thank you, Mr. Wendt.
I really have nothing else. I want to give Justy a chance to talk, but again, we would just let the guys.
Are we creating a subservient property?
Okay, so that's the end of your presentation, so I'm just going to move this to public comment at this time. Okay, so this will be the public comment now. If anybody would like to come forward, please state your name, address.
Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners. I'm Steve Stearns. I'm the Secretary for the Flood and Erosion Control Board. Mr. Mahusky, our Chairman, could not be here this evening due to travel constraints. I would like to take just a second to hand out some information that I think might be helpful based on some comments from an earlier meeting. It seems there is some confusion when we're talking about elevations, and Mr. Mahusky wanted to provide a handout to those attendants.
They're all the same? Never works.
Yeah.
Meg?
Thank you.
So, as an introductory remark, let's be clear on what we mean when we're talking about elevations. 13 feet from what? 13 feet is from the point which FEMA uses, which is called the North American Vertical Datum Line. It is halfway between mean high water and mean low water. It's not 13 feet above the surrounding area. It's 13 feet above the midpoint between mean high water and mean low water. As you can see on the schematic, if you have access to one, in many places Beach Road is at elevation 6 or 6 feet above that line. The surrounding areas are often 6, 7, 8, 9 feet. So at 13 feet, we're not talking about a visual dune that's 13 feet above the surrounding area. Visually, it appears more like a 3 to 4 foot dune structure. So a few points that I think are important to point out. The Flood and Erosion Control Board has prepared a master plan for the entire beachfront in the town of Fairfield. It's been presented to the public on numerous occasions. It is on the town website, fairfieldct.org/FECB, Flood and Erosion Control Board. If you'd like to familiarize yourself with that or go back and take a look at what this master plan looks like. As someone mentioned earlier, why 13 feet? That is the FEMA 100-year flood elevation for our town. As a planning goal, we are attempting to establish that 13-foot elevation on the entire waterfront across the town of Fairfield. In terms of best practices in flood mitigation, to try to meet often competing demands between flood protection and environmental protection, a vegetated dune is considered to be best practices. We're very much in agreement with Mr. Franz's plan. We think it does make every attempt to achieve these best practices. Our only request was to move the elevation up to 13 feet in accordance with our long-term objectives for the town of Fairfield to at least meet that minimal 100-year flood protection line. Other than that, we really have no additional comments. Those are our goals and objectives. I do appreciate the frustration of getting different signals from different agencies. We deal with that all the time on the Flood and Erosion Control Board as well. So I know it's difficult. But that is our request at this time.
One question. If we do set this at 13 feet, what happens to the surrounding properties?
Excellent question. I meant to address that. Thank you. I think there might be a bit of a misperception that Mr. Wendt already addressed. With a sloping vegetated dune, that is considered a best practice because it does a tremendous job at dissipating this wave energy. There are two really elements that we need to think about. One is the static high water line of any flood or storm surge, which is the water that will flow through any space where the elevation is below that static high water line. The other issue is the wave surge above the static high water line during the storm, which is very effectively dissipated by a sloping vegetated dune structure. Unlike a vertical wall or vertical structure, which does have a tendency to divert water into lower areas, the dune actually absorbs that wave energy, dissipates it, the water flows up, and the water flows back down. In terms of the effect of the static mean high water line, the volume of water that's going to go through those lower lying areas, like the beach club, is really primarily a matter of the mean high water line in the storm above that space. What's the area of that space? What is the height of that space is going to determine how much water is going to flow through there. To the extent that we eliminate more of these lower lying spaces, we reduce the amount of water that is going to flow through. For those of you that are not intimately familiar, I happen to be a resident on Oyster Road, not on the marina side, but on the Penfield side of Oyster Road, which runs almost perpendicular to the beach. And numerous houses had their back doors blown in during Sandy, and that is water that is coming from that side of town, not through the marina, which would have come through the front doors, but through the back doors. So anything we can do to protect this area of the beach, affects really a much broader section of town than the immediate homes in that neighborhood, but it certainly affects them as well as emergency access for vehicles. So one of the issues that we constantly tussle with is that, look, yes, a lot of homes have been built to FEMA standards. They're not likely to sustain as much damage as they would have otherwise, but we still have to be concerned about emergency vehicle access into the beach area in the event of a fire, in the event of a medical emergency. If we've got streets that are 3-4 feet underwater, there is no emergency access. We did have a home burned to the ground in 1992 during the nor'easter because there was so much water on Beach Road, Reef Road. Emergency access vehicles were not able to get there. So the issue of only raising home elevations is not going to solve all of our problems and all our challenges.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time. Anybody else from the public like to comment on this application? Hi.
Hello.
Just state your name and address, please.
My name is Mary Tetro, and I have lived at 86 Fairfield Beach Road for 22 and a half years. I want to thank the board for this open hearing on the dunes of Fairfield, what I consider the dunes of Fairfield, and this opportunity to share my opinion. I have talked with many people in my neighborhood who share the concerns that I'll discuss tonight. Some are away and others have previous commitments, but I'm here to speak on behalf of what our worries are. I'll cover 5 points in my remarks. 1, flooding physics that we've had some discussion about, and the nature of sea surges. The beach elevations from the harbor jetty to the south end of Penfield Beach. Coastal surges that we saw in Hurricane Sandy. I'd also want to talk about the 2017 race report on the 5 town beaches. And 5th, the TPZ requirement on the 2 private owners to construct private dunes at a 13-foot elevation. And the first point, a brief review of my high school physics on the dynamics of waters as it pertains to this discussion. I'm making this point that I'm not a coastal expert, nor is this rocket science in my opinion, though it is complicated. So as Jim Wendt was talking about, water, floodwater, sea surges will and do seek the lowest point of elevation. Water passing through breaks in various structures will experience accelerated, diverted floodwaters merging with the direct water flows, causing more intense water velocity and destructive erosion. Barrier coastal structures may protect direct inline geographies, landscapes, structures, but come in with the inherent risk of intensifying damage at lower elevations that become water breakthroughs and throughways. The Chatham Bars break in 1987 is a classic example on the power and scouring effects of coastal water breaks, even with dunes as we saw in Chatham Harbor. So that's my entire knowledge about water physics. I think you get the point. My point is water seeks its lowest elevation. Second point, the beach elevations. They range in my study from 8.5 feet to 14 to 16 foot elevations. They were not engineered in an integrated slope. The highest levels are neither contiguous nor adjacent, but we see the dune and the berm frontage from differing heights, wave-like up and down in their elevations. Specifically, according to the town records, conversations that I've had with Jim Wendt, head of Fairfield Planning and Zoning a few weeks ago, elevation maps found in the race study, which I'll speak about in a minute, and from the homeowner surveys data along the beach, I found the following elevation height information. There are elevations ranging from 14 to 16 feet on parts of the 2,000-foot frontage on the Jennings Beach dunes. There are 8 to 9 foot elevations on the low points on the beach club, some of it rising to near 10 foot on the north and south ends of those property lines. The 3 private properties south of the beach club have the following respective elevations, at least that's what I saw on the maps that I saw with Jim. 12 foot for the property at 191 Fairfield Beach Road, 10 plus for 193, and 11 for 195. Rickard Beach has elevations ranging from 12 to 14 feet. Penfield Beach has berms at the 8-foot level to the 12-plus level. And beyond the new pavilion, on the north side, it is at 10 feet 6 inches, according to the race report. And some parts of Penfield Beach then has 11 and 12-foot elevations. My point is, it's low at the beach club at 8 feet. There's places at Penfield that are at 8 feet, and we get a height of 14 to 16. It's up and down in wave-like structures. Let me note one other interesting fact. The new Penfield Pavilion Beach front has an elevation that is actually lower than the 12-foot height that it was during the storm, Sandy. I have been told that the lowered elevation is designed to allow coastal surges to wash through that dune, through that beach and buildings, and into the parking lots below. And remember, this is the second new pavilion, because the then new pavilion in Sandy was knocked off its pilings when the storm washed over the then higher bulkhead. The bulkhead is gone. The elevation of the beach contour at Penfield was changed and lowered. Point 3, the Superstorm Sandy. In Superstorm Sandy, we gained empirical evidence that coastal flooding here on Fairfield Beach moves along and through dunes of differing heights and breaks through at the lower levels. The water broke through at the harbor, at the jetty, at the beach club, at 193, maybe at 195, I'm not sure, and certainly at Penfield Beach. The high dunes did not prevent flooding. It just moved to another place. And in that diversion, the velocity of the water may have increased the harmful destructive powers of the sea surge. The Superstorm Sandy seawater found the lowest level, and it flooded our town. Point 4, the race report. The race reports do not support dune construction by the town of Fairfield. The Race Coastal Engineering, a waterfront specialization engineering firm based in Stratford, Connecticut, was hired by the town to study our 5 public beaches. The Erosion and Flood Control Board published their report on its website dated September 8, 2017, with separate, comprehensive analysis of each beach and was set to, quote, serve as a planning document for recreational, flood control, and habitat enhancement programs, close quote. It states that the study objective, page 1 of each beach report, that the report, quote, describes an engineering beach and backshore design and maintenance plan that meets minimum standards established by FEMA. Of interest to this discussion tonight is the notation in the recommendations that for each report that, quote, the management program should focus on the beach and the backshore, berm areas, and not include the establishment of a dune system at this site. This statement is found on page 14 from the Jennings Beach Report, on page 17 of the Penfield Beach Report, on page 17 of the Sasco Beach Report, on page 17 of the South Pine Creek Report, and page 17 of the Southport Beach Report. The race report on our beaches does not support dune construction. There are notations in these race reports that should the town want to enhance the dunes in such a way to be protective, that the, quote, reconstructed dune in this area should have a finished crest at elevation plus 15 feet to plus 20 feet, NAVD 88, with minimum width of 30 feet. The same citation is on page 14 of the Jennings Beach Report and page 17 of the Penfield Beach Report. So that is the background. And now in introducing the 5th point of my talk here, let me start by stating clearly that we on Lower Fairfield Beach Road continue to maintain that to mitigate flooding, dunes would need to be at a consistent level elevation, set to whatever height is deemed appropriate by water experts. Should it be the height for a 5-year storm, 10-year storms, 50-year storms, 100-year storms? The height and cost-benefit analysis is yet to be determined on what these heights ought to be. It is only in consistent elevations with supporting coastal engineering analysis and design that flooding is not intensified by unintended diversions and unintended consequences. When water meets a low spot, it is at any break in height. That low spot will allow floodwaters to surge through. It is a proven academic fact, a coastal engineering tenet, and an empirically proven fact that we've seen. This gets the discussions of the dunes on the 2 property permits at 195 and 193 Fairfield Beach Road before this board. We see that the Flood and Erosion Committee has told you that it should be at 13 feet. My understanding is their submissions, the owner's submissions, indicated reconstruction of their dunes to 12 feet initially. The 12-foot dunes would have alignment with some parts of Rickard Beach, and then the dunes at 95, 93, and 91 Fairfield Beach would have the same beach elevations. Penfield at 10.5 is lower on that north end, according to the race report data, and the Beach Club, of course, is still lower. So while not perfect, these contiguous dunes would be at the same elevations at 12 feet. If 195 and 193 go to 13 foot, the outcome is water diversion and greater velocity on adjoining properties at 191 and Rickard Beach, and the adjacent geography at Penfield and possibly the Beach Club, and then down to the rest of the neighborhoods via the lower beach elevations and break elevations. When the race report to the town clearly recommends doing nothing to the dunes, and when the town officials state repeatedly that there's no funds for dune construction, and thus the town elevations will and do continue to vary, why would the town hold these new property owners hostage to a demand for an arbitrary dune height at 13 feet? I believe this would cause unintended flood diversion and intensify flood velocities. I cannot see the benefits to the town for a 13-foot dune for a few hundred feet of beach frontage. It is not a case of doing something. Doing something is better than doing nothing. In my opinion, it's a case where the interventions can cause more harm, especially when there's no understanding of the unintended water velocity consequences. So why do we, and why would you, hold private citizens' building permits hostage to this erratic scheme? I consider the 13-foot height recommendations to be a reckless action. Until there's a comprehensive, integrated coastal flood management plan for the total coastline of Fairfield, rooted in the fundamentals of physics, coastal engineering, we find piecemeal, arbitrary construction of natural dunes, artificial berms, barriers, and walls at uneven levels to be reckless and irresponsible and dangerous. In summary, I want to state we're not opposed to dunes if they're embedded in a comprehensive, integrated coastal solution. We're also quite interested in the in-water solution that the Army Corps of Engineers are evaluating that might provide a brand new approach to flood mitigation. We're worried. We are really worried about what's going to happen and what is the risk to all the people and properties whose homes are not raised and to the gardens and landscaping that are in harm's way by having these lower elevations. Refusing to do anything in light of global warming is ridiculous. And yet, to be confronted year after year with piecemeal coastal barriers seems and is enormously frustrating. I believe we're working the wrong issues. So from the points, water seeks its own level, current dunes are up and down from 8 to 16 feet, Superstorm Sandy showed water was diverted and flooded the town through the low break points. The race study says do not build dunes. And if the town isn't building dunes, and we're lowering the dunes at Penfield, why are we asking them to raise the dunes? If it's good for the goose, it should be good for the gander. please let the people at 193 and 195 Fairfield Beach Road build their dunes to 12 feet. At least then we have a contiguous dune height. And let them start before winter. This is a long, expensive process for them. And please help us get to holistic, comprehensive planning and standard for coastal flooding mitigation. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public like to be heard on this?
I'm new to this process, and every meeting I've sat through, I've
Could you
heard
state your name and
plans.
address?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm talking to this, is that what you said?
Yes, state your name and address.
I've heard plans and programs.
Your name?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Sue Hunt, and I live at 24 Fairfield Beach. I lost my house in the flood, and I watched everything that happened during Superstorm Sandy. And every meeting I've gone to on how we're going to deal with the coast has not been based in fact and a comprehensive plan. You indicate that there's a plan on the website.
Yeah,
that
you know,
plan would
just-
cost millions and millions of dollars to implement. So referring to that plan is not a realistic approach. Also, we talk about 100-year storms. What people are going through in Puerto Rico and islands in the Caribbean, talk to them about 100-year storms. What we witnessed in our community was insane. And so to now arbitrarily pick a new height, whether it should be 12, 13, or 20, makes no sense. Having consistency on the shore is right. I know you indicated you don't have a dog in this race. I have a dog in this race. I lost...
Excuse
yeah,
me.
I'm sorry. Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know how to do this. I'm
No,
sorry.
just look at,
I'm
here,
sorry.
and talk to us. It's
I'm
okay.
sorry. I have a dog in this race. I lost $600,000 during the storm. I'm still in debt with my 401k. So to have an arbitrary decision made right now, not based on fact, doesn't make any sense to me. Mary's very well written and spoken on this, and I really hope you listened to what she said. And I think this chart should be published everywhere on the wave effect on the coast, and now adding a new part to the wave makes no sense to me. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Jan Reber, Beaumont Street. I hate to say anything, a wave may knock me over. I have the opposite point of view. I think this 13 feet is a very reasonable alternative. I don't think the homeowners are being held hostage. They're agreed to do whatever you guys want, so there's no issue of that kind of hyperbole here. The creation of a whole beachfront protection infrastructure is extremely expensive. No town in Connecticut is likely to ever be in a position to implement total flood protection, whatever they want to do in any one project. In addition to the expense, there's tremendous legal jurisdictional issues, there's local, state, federal regulations, there's lines of demarcation, property rights of individual property rights, etc. However, our town, DEEP, FEMA, and the Army Corps of Engineers all support providing funding for elements in a jigsaw strategy for flood control. There is, for instance, a $225,000 outstanding grant at Penfield to review what dunes should be done there and to increase the flood control at Penfield. Our Flood and Erosion Control Board created a master plan. It certainly is idealistic. It's never going to get done in the short term. It will cost millions of dollars. But it's a jigsaw scheme that DEEP, FEMA, Army Corps of Engineers all say is the only way to go. If we don't start somewhere, we're never going to get anywhere. There's a current flood control project at Fairfield's wastewater treatment facility. It's designed to protect that facility from storms like Sandy. It's a berm system. It provides no protection whatsoever for any residences near the facility. Should the town terminate this project and return the funds because it's not holistic flood control, it's going to cause velocity at the homes nearby, that would result in the destruction of a critical town facility in a future superstorm. Should you deny property owners reasonable protection they're willing to undertake on their own? This is a real and not theoretical concern. Some of you may know Paige Herman, the former chair of the Fairfield Beach Residents Association. In a recent letter to the Flood and Erosion Control Board, which is looking at flood control at Penfield, Paige related her experience during Sandy. I just want to read a couple sentences from her letter. In 2012, Superstorm Sandy wreaked havoc on Fairfield shoreline along with severe damage to homes and businesses a mile inland. Without a single doubt, I attribute my house sustainability during Sandy's wrath to that sand dune. Had that first tide surge been completely unchecked, I'm sure the second tide would have demolished my home. I truly believe unless you've witnessed the power of a tidal surge, then you most likely don't get the true meaning of the value of a sand dune. Sand dunes are not the perfect answer to flooding, but they're the first line of defense. and they do and can prevent catastrophic structural damage, unquote. You shouldn't deny that same measure of protection that Page has to these coastal site plan applicants because of a flawed theory that there's no science or rational basis for dunes. Fairfield suffered serious destruction from Sandy. We're going to face worse in the future. We have to do what we can to protect ourselves, and to deny a 13-foot elevation in these coastal site plans sets a dangerous precedent for increasing flood control in Fairfield. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else like to be heard? Attorney Fallon.
Well, I commend Ms. Tetro for her research, but what is frustrating to my clients is her characterization of what brings us here tonight as an open hearing on the dunes of Fairfield. This is not an open hearing on the dunes of Fairfield. This is an application by George and Katie Coleman to build a much smaller house than the one that's there now at 195 Fairfield Beach Road. This is an application brought to you by two people, lifelong beach residents, I've told you all that, who have played by the rules. Before Jack Franzen or the Huntington Company put a pen to anything, they were in Mr. Biankowski's office. They were in Ms. Pooley's office. They sent the plans to the DEEP. And you have the record of all of that. This debate is very interesting, and I understand everyone's position in the debate. But I ask you to focus right now, not on the dunes of Fairfield for this open hearing, but on George and Katie Coleman. George and Katie Coleman filed this application, and it was before you on September 26th. Most all CAM applications, as we all know, unless there's some specific issue of noncompliance, are approved without public hearing, just like the one that was on your agenda earlier tonight was. Because of the debate, and with all due respect to Jan, we are a little held hostage, as we are in the middle of this 12 to 13 or 13 to 12, we were continued to a public hearing on October 17th. Unless you act equitably, and I never, as you know, make this request or suggestion, you're going to close this public hearing, and they won't hear from you again until November 14th. Almost 2 months since this matter was first before you, and getting on 3 months since they filed it. So what am I asking you to do? I'm asking you to focus on what this hearing is. As I've said, it's about a house on 195 Fairfield Beach Road. With respect to all the positions that you've heard tonight, all artfully presented with regard to this question of the dune height, I'm asking you to make a decision in your authority, having heard everything you've heard, and having heard from your staff, your engineer, and the DEP, of 11, 12, or 13. We will abide by that. And I am respectfully, and I do this once every 5 years, and I know it's hard tonight, asking you to consider the equitable issue here of whether that decision could be made for the Colemans this evening, because otherwise, we'll see you in November. But I do appreciate your consideration, your concern. There could not be better people who'd be sensitive to all these issues tonight. But it seems to me that whether you establish that dune at 12 or 13 feet shouldn't hold up this application any further. And I do thank you for your patience.
Attorney Fallon?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Quick question. This may or may not have relevance, but any issues with FEMA insurance, flood insurance between the dune levels?
No.
Okay.
We've, as I said, we can live with and will suffer no ill effects, whatever you decide. We just would hope that you would decide it so they could get on, because otherwise they're going to lose. It's going to be Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you. Attorney Fallon, before I close, I just want you to know, listen, we sent this public application, and you know, because you know why we sent this to a public hearing.
And I did not mean critically of that. I
No,
understand you
I
had
mean, we
public
had to get
interest.
our information before we make any judgment on something as serious as this. So, and there's a lot to digest here, so I really don't think we're going to be voting on this, and I'm really apologizing, I'm sensitive to their timing, and I know winter's coming, and I realize the elections and everything are going, you just know it's a normal protocol. And with something like this, it's not like we're looking at a regular subdivision where we could just say, does it meet all our regulations, let's discuss it for a half hour, look it over. There's a lot involved here. I mean, you got to appreciate that. We're going to probably have to go back to town hall, probably talk back to staff, talk back to the town engineer, and get more information before we could just make a decision like that.
I respect your consideration.
I appreciate it. With that, I close the hearing. Oh, wait, go ahead.
Can we ask a question to staff?
Sure.
Is there any way we can separate the issue of the dunes from the, because the rest of the project is not at all up for question. They can, could they start construction? No one's here arguing that, and then the dune issue is a matter of a bulldozer dumping an extra foot of sand or not. Is there some way to separate that aspect of the site and say, let's not hold these people up, and say that a condition of approval is they accept whatever height we eventually come back to them with for the setting the dune at? Because I think the dune issue is a big one for the town to understand what's going to happen. But I agree, I don't need to see these people have their project held up for
Well
that.
thought out.
In order for them to move forward, you need to have an approval. If there's going to be a condition of approval to set a dune height, whether it be the existing elevation at elevation 12, that seems to be generally accepted, or 13, which is the Flood and Erosion Control Board's recommendation, you need an approval from this commission. So they can't move forward without that approval. So you need to decide what that condition is going to be before we have an actual approval in place.
What is,
Jim, but haven't they agreed already to abide by whatever
we say.
decision the commission comes up with?
That's correct. But we can't issue a permit till you have an actual decision.
But it couldn't be approved for the house conditioned upon whatever the board approves for the dune?
Well, they're part and parcel of the same application. You're standing in judgment, or sitting in judgment, of a coastal site plan application. So that has to be adjudicated before we can issue the permit to proceed.
Well, let me just, I've never argued with Mr. Went on such things, I always lose, but to pick up on the commissioner's argument, I mean, he raised an interesting, and I appreciate the equitable spirit in which you're doing it. Could not the CAM application, the CAM site plan application that's before you tonight, be approved, subject to a condition that the applicant would have to submit revised plans at a dune height between 11 and 13 as ultimately decided by the commission? You couldn't sign off on a building permit until they had made the decision on the dune. But if we had an approval in place subject to that condition, we know we have a house, it's just we're waiting to hear on the dune, and they could start working with Mr. Franzen to process their building permit with the other town departments, understanding that you couldn't sign off on it until the dune issue was done. I mean, it might save them a little time. I don't know.
That's what I'm going to do. Okay, I'm going to close the hearing on this. I'm going to consult with staff on this, and we're going to take a 5-minute recess. Okay, so I discussed this with staff, and as much as we like to sell this tonight, we just can't. I mean, we have to do this the right way, and we have to discuss this with the town engineer, and we're going to have to discuss this with staff during the course of the week. I'm sensitive to the time needs, I understand that. We had to go to a public hearing for more education for our commission, and I'm sure this will be settled on November 14th. I apologize, but that's the best I could do. All right, thank you. With that, we're going to move on now. Next item on our agenda, which is 2500 Black Rock Turnpike, and with that... Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, 193 Fairfield Beach Road.
Back.
Chairman Wagner.
Thank you. So, thank you, Mr. Alessi. Next is 193 Fairfield Beach Road, coastal site plan application of Gina Shapiro Braun on behalf of Thomas and Rebecca Scalera pertaining to a single-family dwelling in the A zone. Anyone here representing 193 Fairfield Beach? Oh, hello, sorry.
Good evening. My name is Don Fairbanks. I'm the architect for the project at 193 Fairfield Beach Road, the future residents of Tom and Rebecca Scalera. In the interest of brevity, because it's been a long night already, I won't repeat or rehash any of the data that Attorney Fallon so eloquently spoke previously. I just want to mention that we believe that this application is in accordance with all of CAM application requirements. It's been reviewed by the town. We've addressed their concerns, and like the previous applicant said, the height of the dune, we will abide by whatever decision is made. We have a client, or I have a client who's very interested in having this expeditiously resolved due to some health concerns. So that's all I have to say. If you have any questions about the application specifically, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions that haven't already been okay. Thank you.
Just about the drawings, the architectural drawings. I mean,
Commissioner Macklin.
not directly, but I was trying to understand it. If I'm looking at the A0, the plan, the two things on either side of the staircase, are those both garage doors in the front elevation? I see one here. Sorry. So this is just a panel that breaks away, right? Correct. And then there's a garage door here, and there's one here as well?
There's a garage here. This is a storage area, and then there's a two-car garage.
Okay. All right, thank you. I just wanted to understand my orientation on the drawing. That was it. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any member of the public wish to be heard on this application? Okay. Hearing none, no need for rebuttal. I'll close the public hearing on this item. Thank you. Next item is items 4 and 5. I'll call them together. They're related. 2500 Black Rock Turnpike, zone change application of ACM Realty to establish a design commercial district on land presently zoned residence R3, and 2500 Black Rock Turnpike, special permit application of ACM Realty for conversion of an existing bank to restaurant use and related site improvements in the design commercial district. This hearing was continued from October 10th, 2017. At that time, we were in public comment, and which will continue tonight. As soon as all of the members of the public have been heard, we'll go to applicant's rebuttal, and then after that concludes, the public hearing will be closed. So with that, yes, you may, please.
Do you hear me through this? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Abbas Nadim, and our family lives on 343 Steiner Street, which is closest to the bank. This case before you might be a simple application for zoning change to accommodate more parking space. But similar to any other issues related to community, it had much wider implications. There are times that this committee might vote on a controversial issue consistent with the long-term strategic interests of the town, where the town and the resident all benefit, but this application is not one of them. There is very little upside for the town and the applicant, and a tremendous amount of downside for the neighborhood, community at large, and town of Fairfield. We visited a bigger version of this issue in 2006, and it is educational to revisit some of them. The applicant, similar to this case, hired a highly competent and capable attorney, an array of experts, though competent may not be right all the time. The expert claimed that there will be no environmental impact. In 2006, we had in the back of the property foxes, coyotes, wild turkeys, eagles, and other wetland creatures. Now we have only squirrels and woodpeckers. If there is a claim that there will be no change in the environment, we better ask the squirrel and the woodpeckers. The expert claimed that the additional traffic on Black Rock Turnpike, which was not seconded by the police and the fire department at that time, and all you have to do right now is observe the current congestion, knowing that you do not need more. There is a claim that there will be a no left turn into the Black Rock Turnpike. Well, go to Billy's Bakery parking lot down the road. There are two signs, do not enter and no left turn. Set up a camera and measure how many drivers disobey these signs, and they only have coffee and blueberry muffin in their bloodstreams. The expert claimed that the reduction in the value, there are no reduction in the value of the property. Our property value had dropped $200,000 since 2006. Given the fact that we also spent $100,000 remodeling, altogether we have about $300,000. It is hard to accept such a devaluation of the property and equity in the house close to retirement. The type of establishment and vision, the hours, early morning truck deliveries, some potential unruly patrons' late night behavior will make ours one of the most undesirable neighborhoods to live in. We wonder about the quality of life for our grandson, the children of those who moved into this neighborhood in search of peace, quiet, and a place to raise children. Quite contrary, it would be discourage anyone planning to move into the neighborhood and Fairfield if the commercial property start creeping into residential. My wife and I are not in a position to hire an attorney and an area of expert to contact the applicant. We simply do not have the resources and the stamina. The only position left for us and our neighbor is to trust the good and logical judgment of this honorable commission to reject the application at hand. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
May I
Thank you.
also offer this one for the record?
Sure. You can hand that into our clerk. Thank you very much. Any other members in the public?
Long night. Hi, I'm John Cleach. I live on 15 Old Black Rock Turnpike. We sent a couple emails, so I'm not going to read all those. But a couple extra points. When we listened to the tape that was done, it was good to hear that the traffic study was going to be done, but then subsequently we were disappointed to hear that to entertain a zone change prior to potentially that traffic study being finalized.
You mean the review of Black Rock Turnpike?
Yes, that's correct. As a buyer, I think the value of the properties that are adjoining that are going to be affected by this. That's one issue that we didn't really cover in our email. The second is that the traffic survey that was offered last time only addressed peak hours, and the difference between a bank and a restaurant bar is that there are lots of activities in non-peak hours into the night. And I think there was no reference to either Fairfield Police for the issues on Black Rock Turnpike as well. I didn't hear that in the tape that was offered. There was a suggestion about a right-hand turn being made by the police department for safety reasons. 2 years ago, that was changed when you come out of that property into one lane if you go right. If you think there's congestion there now, try having other cars trying to dump into that one lane leaving. I think it just increases the difficulty of merging into that part of the road. A couple other points is the clearing of the land when the digging it has to be done. We were subject to diamond drilling because you can't do blasting because the dam is not too far away for the houses that were built on the other side of our street. It acts as a natural boundary, the squirrels and the woodpeckers. It's a sound barrier, and there are noise issues and rules around the noise issues. I don't think I heard anything studied about that. car doors, smoking, et cetera. So I don't believe there's any positives that have been offered to do this. The building is really zoned already for commercial use, and it can be used. So I think at a minimum, what I would urge is, I don't know why rush? If anything, more due diligence on what needs to be done here, and at best, believe the zoning request should be denied. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Any other members of the public?
Oh, yeah.
Hello,
Hi there.
Commissioners. My name is Neil Goodkind, and I reside at 25 Old Black Rock Turnpike. I'm not an immediate neighbor, but it's my neighborhood that we're talking about. First, there are 23 neighbors at the last meeting opposed to the zone change. At least 14 are in opposition here today. Would you stand up if you're in opposition? Just to get a little sense of who's here. Thank you. Our neighborhood and quality of life will rest with your judgment. You alone will determine whether the once untouchable residential commercial zone line is violated and moved. Numerous requests to change the zoning since 2002 for 2500 Black Rock Turnpike have been denied by your commission. I don't see members that are around since then, but there have been numerous, in fact, it was Attorney Fallon who put a lot of these forth, and they wanted to encroach on that zone line that we're talking about. Let's see. The master plan, which people have spoken about, realizes the delicate balance of ecology and quality of life in the Lake Hills area, and specifically states that expansion of the commercial zone into residential neighborhoods should be resisted. I'm presenting a protest petition signed by 49 homeowners' names. This represents over 20% of the area landowners within the 500 feet of the proposed zone change. These properties in red just give me a minute, I'll get it out. These properties in red, this is part of the application, I'm sure you've seen this, but these properties were notified by mail. This is a map of the 500-foot perimeter. Marked in red are all the properties that have signed this protest petition. If residential areas are missing, it's only because these properties were not canvassed due to time constraints. As you can see, this is more than 20% of the area of the lots within the 500 feet. According to Connecticut State Statute 8-3B, there are enough property owners having signed this protest petition to require a 2/3 vote of all members of this commission. Without this formal protest, a simple majority would have been sufficient. And I'm going to present you with the petition right now.
Thanks. If you could give that to the clerk right over there, that would be great. She'll stamp it into the file and it'll be circulated to us. Thank you. Is that the red?
That's the red marking. I'll give it to him afterwards.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. State of Connecticut law is clear on this. Neighbors matter when it comes to a zone change, and their property rights, like Mr. Nadeem and the people the neighbors that spoke last time, the three neighbors, property rights should be respected by your commission. In fact, all within that 500 feet. And good. I have 7 photos I'd like to share since they help clarify what neighbors have been talking about. Let me hold them up. And Bev, would you hand out the photos to the commissioners, please? We have copies for you.
Are they this?
Are they all the same?
Yeah, they're all different.
No, I mean,
Then-
we'll just pass them down.
These packets, are these
are all
multiple
the same?
copies of the
Yes.
same photos?
Yes, and he's going to show them up there also.
Thank you.
Last Tuesday, a picture's worth 1,000 words, and I fully believe that. Last Tuesday, I had the opportunity to take these photos when Black Rock Turnpike was closed in both directions for 6 hours. This was due to a two-car collision with one rolling over. The accident occurred in front of 2500 Black Rock Turnpike. Photo 1, which is what we're talking about. Photo 1 is from a press release of the accident. So if you don't see cars in these pictures, it's one of the few times that it's not, that the cars will not be present and it won't be congested. Otherwise, it is. And you can see the rollover, the pole that came down that day. Photo 2, okay, shows the dangerous exits and entrances that everyone has been talking about, present where Black Rock Turnpike merges to one lane. Northbound traffic usually backs up from the Samp Mortar light. You know what? Photo 3 is looking northbound from the Samp Mortar light. Okay, you can probably match it to the ones that I have here. If you have problems, let me know. Photo 4 is looking northbound from the Samp Mortar light at the residential neighborhood. Many residential homes are in back and next to 2500 Black Rock Turnpike, and a lot of those people are here that aren't necessarily right on Steiner Street. Photo 4 shows the residential buffer, okay, with a clear demarcation in line with the telephone pole of the residential commercial zone. The retaining wall is in the commercial zone, while the trees and vegetation are in the residential zone. Photo 5, right here. That's from the parking lot on the lot, and it shows the current east side retaining wall of 2500 Black Rock Turnpike. If approved, if the zone changes approved, this retaining wall will be moved 46 feet to accommodate the additional parking. The Steiner Street residences are just beyond this residential buffer. Photo 6 shows the cul-de-sac where 3 of your speakers were from the last meeting. Their houses are shown there, and Mr. Dunleavy and Mr. Nadeem and Mrs. Staccato. Okay. And Lloyd Banker, who was the older man who was here last time. Well, we're all older, what can I say? It's just a degree. Photo 6 is the cul-de-sac on Steiner Street, which shows the thin residential buffer that the red arrow points down to, right here. Okay? If the zone is changed, please make no mistake about it. Trees will have to be cut, eliminating a significant amount of this residential buffer. It does affect properties, your decision. Photo 7, okay, is from the last hearing, 2002, of the Ratner Veterinary Clinic, which complied with the half-acre design commercial zoning and kept zoning in compliance, just as it is now in 2500 Black Rock Turnpike. Photo, Exhibit A. Okay, good. Exhibit A from Google's map. It's right here, and I'll give you copies later. But it shows the diversity of the resident. I'd like to bring this around and show you. Okay. But it shows the diversity of the residential area. Here is the commercial line right here. Here's the property in question. And, sorry, here's the commercial line. Here's the property in question. And you can see all the vegetation, and you can see the blue is the lake right here. That's where all the wildlife is coming from, and that's where all our enjoyment as citizens is coming from. You know, the residential area of Black Rock Turnpike, and thank you. This is all half-acre and quarter-acre residential zones. Bev, would you give each commissioner a handout? We have one for everyone.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, we'll figure it out.
This handout reiterates the important points that neighbors spoke about and/or emailed to you. On the left side of the folder is 6 reasons to deny the zone change for 2500 Black Rock Turnpike. On the right side of the folder, you'll find the exhibits referred to in the reasons to deny the zone change for 2500 Black Rock Turnpike. In the interest of expediency, I'll just go over the main reasons, and you can read yourself what the what's in each paragraph. But number one, first and foremost, the zone change is in violation of the master plan. Number two, the change in grand list would be insignificant or negative. Why do I say negative? Because as Mr. Nadeem has told you, the house values go down when we have infringement on the residential zone. There is no pressing need to rezone. There are no shortage of restaurants, including family restaurants. Okay, there are 36 restaurants within 1.1 miles. Okay, and some of them are quite large establishments, much larger than this. The zone change poses serious safety and congestion problems, as people have spoken about. And 6, this zone change impacts surrounding neighborhoods. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. And I trust that common sense in denying you will use your common sense in denying this application. Thank you very much. What is it?
There's item 7 on your list.
I think that's the petitions. Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the petitions which I handed out.
Yes.
If you look in your exhibits, you've gotten a copy of all 49 people who have signed that protest petition.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Terrific. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm Kevin Hausman. I live at 310 Sassapequan Road, which is on Samp Motor Reservoir. I've been a Fairfield resident for 35 years, and I am against this restaurant moving into this location. I think what we've seen is that there's enough changes already. There's no need to change this from a residential to commercial zone to increase the parking area so that they can attract a larger audience. I think there's also lots of problems that will cause, and I think that will hurt the neighbors and the neighborhoods. And if we're looking at it being very difficult to make a left-hand turn out of that, if you make a right-hand turn and you pull up to either Samp Mortar Road or to Old Black Rock Turnpike, to turn around, it's going to increase the number of cars turning in that area, and it will also increase or decrease. Is this working all right?
No, yeah.
Okay. It's not on?
Just
Okay.
maybe just pull the microphone a little bit closer to your mouth. Yeah, we can.
Sure, sorry. Is that better?
It is better, yes.
I think that if you look at the traffic, and particularly, if you look at trying to make a left-hand turn out of that driveway, the driveway right next to that, which is the White Birch Plaza, if you look at making a left turn out of the Citgo station there's a lot of activity and a lot of left-hand turns in a very difficult area. And if you notice that the traffic goes from 2 lanes to 1 lane right in front of this driveway and back to 2 lanes again at the light at St. Morta Road, I think it's going to really increase the number of accidents and probably potentially serious accidents. And I think that anyone traveling there is going to be in a more dangerous scenario and situation. We already know that the road is very difficult, it's very dangerous, very confusing. Adding traffic is not going to help the situation, it's only going to make it worse. I think that the quality of life issue is huge, particularly for the neighbors that abut this property. I don't think there's anyone in their right mind that would like this kind of an environment in their backyard at 2 o'clock in the evening when people are coming out of a bar. And this is a family restaurant, but it's also a bar, and it's a sports bar. And I think it's going to really hurt the neighbors having to deal with these issues and problems, concerns. I think that, you know, their quality of life being woken up at 2 o'clock at night when people are slamming doors, yelling at each other, or just having a good time and enjoying their evenings and coming out of a happy environment in a bar, I think that that's not going to be a good idea for the people in the neighborhood. I'm also a member of Lake Hills Association. I'm always concerned with any issues that might increase the pollution in the lake. There's a storm drain directly across from my house that empties directly into the lake. And in heavy rains, there's a lot of issues and a lot of debris and pollutants and runoff issues that hit the lake. And you can see a sheen on the lake. You can see all kinds of issues and problems with that. And it's all based on the runoff for those. I know that they've gone through the Conservation Commission on this, and what they've established is an acceptable way of draining the parking lot. But I'm concerned that there's going to be runoff, that these are not going to be maintained properly, that 5-10 years down the road, the next person who owns the property is not going to maintain them, and there's going to be more runoff, more pollution, and more issues with the lake. I think that there's other places that would be better for this location. I think this is a potentially very bad location for this, and I think evidence of that is, the banks that were there, which required much less traffic, were not very successful there, and they failed. I think that one of the biggest issues, too, is, and the issues we addressed earlier with the application for a medical facility there that's going to be 3 stories high, once this parking lot has moved into the residential area and all those additional parking places have been approved, if that were to happen, which I hope it does not, the potential for a much larger building in that area, in that facility, could make it even worse than it already is. So my wish is that you consider this and reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Apologies for that. Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to be heard?
Hi, my name is Ana Agudelo. I'm the property owner of 2654 Black Rock Turnpike. I sent an email earlier today, so I'm not going to repeat that. But what I'm most concerned about is traffic and buffering of sound. I'm very happy where I am. I'm a new first-time home buyer. This is my first home, and I love it as it is. I don't want anything to change. And I think if you allowed this zoning change, it will totally devalue my property, my only property ever. And I don't want that to change. Everything is great, and I really love to stay that way. And also I understand that the person that is investing in this property is from Westport. So I would probably say that people from Westport will never allow this to happen. So maybe they should try to do that over there instead of try here, and not to disturb our peace community. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Beverly Goodkind. I reside at 25 Old Black Rock Turnpike. I am a past member of the RTM. I served 2 terms on the RTM. I'm a past alternate member of this Town Planning and Zoning Board, and I'm a past Affordable and Senior Housing Commissioner. I am also a lifetime long resident of Fairfield. Fairfield is a town that cares deeply about each family's safety and the quality of its neighborhoods. That is why we need to pay close attention to the town's 2016 master plan, which specifically states that the zoning board should, and I'm going to repeat this, should resist expansion of the commercial district within the St. Martyr Black Rock Turnpike area. That is why we need to take into account the 2017 Black Rock Turnpike Safety Study presentation commissioned by the town of Fairfield and paid for with a state grant. Attorney Fallon says that the several hundred extra hundred cars entering and exiting the proposed sports bar is, meaning it's too trivial to consider. I don't agree. The 2017 Black Rock Turnpike study found the area of 2500 Black Rock Turnpike to be extremely congested and extremely prone to accidents. This is due to the numerous curb cuts within a short distance and the merging of the northbound lanes just before 2500 Black Rock Turnpike. It is not unusual for there to be gridlock in this exact location. That is why we need to listen to Lloyd Banger from Steiner Street, who spoke last time and said overdevelopment is the fastest way to reduce property values. That is why we need to listen to Adrian Kreiser from J Circle when she says she's concerned about the light and the noise in her backyard after the trees are cut down and the residential buffer is turned into a commercial parking lot. That is why we need to listen to Carl Staccato from Steiner Street when he says allowing a zone change for this sports bar is a slippery slope. There's no shortage of restaurants in the area, as everyone's mentioned. There's 36 within 1 mile of the proposed change, and several of them are family restaurants. That is why we need to listen to the 49 concerned neighbors who live within 500 feet of the proposed zone change and signed the petition urging the Town Planning and Zoning Commission to deny the application, which will adversely impact the health, safety, and welfare of the community. We, as residents of the Black Rock Turnpike neighborhood, ask you to do what is right for the safety of the town and the preservation of our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public wish to be heard on this? Going once, going twice? Okay, thank you very much. Attorney Fallon, rebuttal?
Well, good evening. I appreciate the Commission's attention with regard to this application. And before I address a few rebuttal comments and final summary comments, I would like to have Mr. Galante just address briefly, 5 minutes perhaps, of just some points that would be rebutting or responsive to comments by the members of the public with regard to traffic-related considerations.
Excellent.
Good evening, Mike Galante, Frederick Clark Associates. I know last week you heard from Steve from my office. He gave you, I think, a very detailed summary of the traffic report prepared by our office. I'm just going to touch on a couple items tonight and then respond to one discussion last week about a right turn only moving from the side driveway. And then I will submit this table, which just discusses a comparison between a left and right turn movement from the driveway as it is today and a right turn only movement from the driveway if there was a left turn restriction. A couple things, and everything I'm going to talk about you really heard last week. One is the estimate of site traffic for this building is based on the gross floor area of the building itself, which is 3,450 square feet of floor area. So if this rezoning was not to be approved and the building still becomes a restaurant, which is a permitted use, we're still going to generate the same amount of traffic that was mentioned in the traffic report, which is about 35 trips during a Friday afternoon peak hour and about 50 trips during a Saturday midday peak hour, and likely 50 trips on a Saturday evening.
Right. So the reason that I was the one who asked the question. The reason why I asked the question is because the basis for the application is that in order to expand the patron floor area by an additional 480 feet approximately, they needed additional parking spaces to comply with the regulations. So it seems logical by extension to say that if they don't have the additional parking spaces, then the proposal could be built at 480 square feet less for patron area than it is proposed. Logic would indicate that there would be less traffic generated by the site. And so what I'm hearing you say is that, notwithstanding that logic, that I don't think anybody in this room could or would dispute, the ITE manual bases the estimates on the square footage of the entire building,
the gross floor area,
which is not going to change at all anyway.
Correct.
So, I think we all understand that point, and I think it actually makes the point that the ITE has its flaws, because it doesn't make logical sense for there to be the same number of cars generated by a restaurant that's 480 square feet smaller than one with more floor area. I mean, but I understand. The ITE says that we should base, that you should base your opinions on, the numbers for the gross floor area space. I think I summarized it, pretty well.
That's fine. A fair comment. I've been doing this a long time, and the trip generation handbook that you're referring to, which estimates traffic for different land uses, there's nothing in there that bases site traffic generation for any land use on a parking space.
No, not on the parking space.
The
parking space issue is only relative to how much patron floor area space they can build out.
That's correct.
Right.
But the estimate for traffic, in this case a restaurant or any commercial development, is based on the square footage.
Right.
In this case, gross floor area. My only point is it's not based on the number of parking spaces that might be provided. And a sarcastic way of looking at it is a parking space doesn't generate traffic, and people might laugh at that statement, but it's the land use that's related to that parking space that's generating the traffic. Therefore, it's based on the square footage of the building. And that's, I just want to, I know everyone understands that, but I want to repeat that tonight.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. What the ITE doesn't take into account is that while there may be a footprint and an opportunity to build a 3,480 square foot building with gross floor area, the ITE doesn't take into account the particular land limitations that would restrict the number of parking spaces that could be available.
That's correct.
Which would impact the amount of patron floor area that a 3,480 square foot building could permit. And so, under the ITE, because of that limitation, there's no difference in the number of trips that are estimated with this parcel because of that building and the limitation on the boundary.
Correct. No sense in going any further. I mean, you can have a restaurant on Post Road in Fairfield Center with no parking. We would still be basing it on the square footage of that space.
Yep.
So just as a comparison. But it's a fair comment that you make. The next part I want to just touch on briefly, and these graphics are in the report itself, but when we collected our traffic data, we not only used what DOT has, but we put our own hoses across the road to measure traffic on an hourly basis. And this is we did multiple days and a weekend. This was a Friday condition, and the highlighted yellowish green band is the peak volume measured on the road itself, the typical weekday morning peak hour, where we're essentially not generating any traffic at this restaurant. And then the Friday afternoon peak hour, which happens to be 5 to 6 p.m. Now, there was discussion, and I think maybe, Chairman, you may have said this, that there's traffic on Black Rock Turnpike all the time. Yes, of course there is. There's traffic. My only point for showing this graph again tonight is that the traffic changes different times of the day. Our analysis is based on the 5 to 6 p.m., which is the highest volume recorded on Black Rock Turnpike in the afternoon or in the evening. While this restaurant may not generate its peak traffic at 5 o'clock, it may generate it at 6, 6:30, or 7 o'clock. The graphic shows that traffic on Black Rock Turnpike starts dropping off. That doesn't mean there's no traffic. There's traffic on Black Rock Turnpike, and everyone here would say, yes, it's a busy road, no doubt. I'm not going to say it's not, but the traffic changes as you go later in the evening. My only point is we analyzed the highest volume. We put that site traffic that I mentioned a minute ago, to 35 to 50 trips, on top of the highest volume and analyzed the driveway. Now, the reason for analyzing just the driveway is by Connecticut DOT standards, which is based on volume, site traffic volumes. What should we analyze? We're analyzing the driveway because we have no more than 50 trips. And the standard is if you have 100 trips added to an intersection, you should be analyzing the intersection. Or if you have 50 vehicles turning left at an intersection, you should analyze the intersection. We don't meet that criteria in each case. So that's why we focused on the driveway. And you know from our past work, we're not afraid to analyze other intersections in the study area. On a Saturday, which is figure 5, which is the Saturday condition, the middle of the day is generally the highest volume on Black Rock Turnpike. Absolutely, Black Rock is a busy road on Saturday, no doubt. We're all residents here. We analyzed that time period. Now, another busy time for this restaurant would be in the early or late evening, which, 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. You can see the traffic volumes are again dropping off. Yes, there's traffic, but certainly not at the level that you find in this case at noontime, noon to 1 o'clock in the middle of the day. Yes?
What are the other two lines?
It's by direction. The top line is a two-way volume. So that's why I'm pointing to the total volume. Now, the peak volume on Black Rock Turnpike on a Friday afternoon is 1,500 vehicles in a 1 hour period. On a Saturday, it's 1,600 vehicles. There's 100 vehicles more in a 1 hour period during the busiest time on a Saturday. Those are the time periods we analyze. We put that our site traffic on top of those highest recorded volumes and analyze the driveway. Now, in analyzing the driveway, we have today a left and a right turn lane, two lanes, and we analyze the same condition because that's what's there and that's what the state and this town actually approved, and the bank was implemented years ago. And I did that traffic study, I guess it was 6 or 7 or 8 years ago. We kept the same configuration. Now, there was some discussion, what if it's only a right turn movement? First, the state would likely not come in and restrict the left turn movement. They don't restrict turning movements, quite frankly, because no people that want to go left, they will make a left turn. The only time we have left turn restrictions is if you're near a signalized intersection. And then we would consider that. And we are not afraid to make that recommendation when necessary. I didn't make the recommendation here because I thought it was appropriate. Keep in mind the bank analysis that we did years ago on the higher volumes that nobody agrees with, but if it was a different bank here, it could have generated that traffic.
Could have, yeah, right.
It could have.
Yeah.
This particular bank did not, the one that was there in the past, and I wouldn't say it failed because of the lack of customers. All the bank branches, and we did all of them in Fairfield County, they all closed. All those branches were closed or sold off to different banks.
And I don't know that anyone was assigning a reason for the bank not having been successful.
It's more than just the location.
Yeah, right. I mean,
in this case, it's not the location.
Right. I mean, it's a variety of factors.
Yes.
But the fact of the matter is that it closed. It failed. It didn't do well. And the one before it, similarly. And so whatever had been there over the course of recent history hasn't generated the kind of traffic that the estimates.
A bank could.
The bank could, that a
could.
bank could, right,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
And we all know that other bank names could generate a higher level of traffic as opposed to what was there in the past. Not for us to decide tonight.
Right.
Yes, sir.
You want to keep going, or you want to wait? Want to finish all this question?
Yeah.
I mean, you got a lot more to go, go
I
ahead.
have a little bit more.
No, go ahead,
A little more
I'll
than I
wait.
can answer any question
Yeah, I'll wait.
you want. My only point is, in the analysis of the no left turn out of the driveway itself, if we were to restrict that left turn movement, that eliminates the level of service D for the left turn movement from the driveway. If we put all of our site traffic as a right turn only movement, it'll operate B to C. The B on a Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock, the C on a Saturday afternoon at noon time. So the right turn only movement can be accommodated. It's not a high volume. We're adding 14 vehicles to a right turn movement on a Saturday. So that becomes a right turn movement. The disadvantage of a right turn only movement is that car is likely going to go into the Citgo gas station, make a U-turn and come back out. Or Sat Mortar, go through a neighborhood. I would guess that they're going to go through the gas station because it's the easiest thing to do. There was reference to the one lane, the change in lane configuration on Black Rock Turnpike. The state did that about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, and they created a left turn pocket, if you will, northbound on Black Rock Turnpike at the traffic signal to Sat Mortar Drive. Southbound, if you recall, they made it one lane southbound in the state with a wide painted shoulder, and 2 weeks later they pretty much changed it back to a two-lane approach because it didn't work.
The one lane didn't work?
The one lane southbound on Black Rock Turnpike did not work. It created traffic queues.
I see.
So it went back to the two lane, which was you can make the right turn on red on Sat Mortar to go into that area.
Right.
And that was a change the state made after they realized what they did wasn't a great idea. And I commend them for coming back and changing something when they feel it wasn't the right idea. So the table that we have here that we'll hand out, it's out. Okay, thank you. It just simply summarizes the analysis of the driveway as a right turn only movement. And it works. I mean, it does work from a traffic capacity point of view and queuing and so on. Just last point, right turn only. As I mentioned, I think the patron would likely go to the Citgo restaurant, gas station, make a U-turn and come back out. DOT approved two lanes on the driveway some years ago. I doubt very much they would come in and say you can only have one lane and make it a right turn only. I only say that from experience with DOT. One other
Was that prior approval before or after the 2 lanes were reduced to 1 lane right there?
It was when it was a 2-lane northbound on Black Rock Turnpike.
So has DOT looked at it since it's been merged down to 1 lane?
No, I'm sure they have not. The driveway itself, our driveway?
Yeah.
No.
Do you think that would impact their consideration of?
No, I think they might say it's a better situation because you have one less lane to cross.
Right. Well,
I'm just,
yeah, no,
I know how DOT thinks, I think. I hope. One last thing, there was some discussion about an internal connection to the Whiteberg Shopping Center immediately to the south of us, with the Lilac Restaurant and so on.
Yeah, so there was discussion about possibly connecting the parking lots or a shared parking situation, and I think that topography prohibits there being a driving connection.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, can
Yeah.
I speak to that?
Yeah, yes, please.
I mean, I know there's some history about the previous
You
owner.
use the microphone.
Because
I raised this question with Mr. Wendt. There's probably a 6-inch change in elevation between the two sites. So physically, I think it could happen, but I know there's some history with the other property owner perhaps not agreeing to it, and you'd have to have that happen. But in terms of physically, can it be done? Sure, there's no question.
Yeah,
I think
if I may, I would agree, because
there's no
we went
change in
out and looked at it
elevation.
also. There's a wall there, but the grade on
curb.
either side of the wall, based on Phil Cerrone's expertise, is about the same.
Especially in the back, because you got the back.
Yeah, there's already a physical
There's a walkway
sidewalk
between
connection.
the two.
But besides the ability, the lack of the ability to ever get the owner to consent to that, Mr. Galante, will you address, even if that were leaving aside the practical issue, if that were feasible, what would be your impression of the traffic in June?
Yeah, there are a couple of things. My concern is if we were to provide that internal connection, with our site configuration, the driveway and the parking lot and the building sitting in the middle of our site that's developed, we would likely have to close our driveway to Black Rock Turnpike. because it's just simply too close as far as internal connections between the shopping center and our site itself. Number two, my other concern is pedestrian activity in the shopping center parking lot. We now have a patron coming in, the one entrance only on the southerly side of the shopping center, who wants to go to the restaurant. He's driving through the parking lot, not looking for a parking space. He's simply going to our site. I have a concern with pedestrian activity and likely speeds being a little bit higher because that person's not looking for a parking space. They're driving through the parking lot. So those are my couple of concerns. If we close our driveway, truck deliveries go through the shopping center, assuming the shopping center owner would agree with that, which we know they won't. So those couple aspects of it, I don't think it's a feasible idea. Physically, is it possible? Sure. But from a traffic perspective and mostly safety of pedestrians in the parking lot, adding more traffic that's simply driving through a parking lot, I wouldn't recommend that. I don't have an issue with internal connections. We do that all the time. But in this case, the size of our lot, I wouldn't recommend it because of its closeness to the driveway to Black Rock Turnpike. Yes.
Go ahead. I'll wait for you to finish. You got more to go?
No, I think I'm finished.
You done? Okay. I got a couple of things. You said you did the traffic study on the bank, right?
The traffic counts?
Well, yeah. Well, when the bank was being developed or built.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay. Back then, though, we had 2 lanes of traffic, right?
In each direction.
In each direction.
Yes.
Now, the 1 lane is merging right in front of the driveway.
Correct.
And now we're seeing, instead of 2 cars coming together, we're going to see 3 cars coming together, right in front of it. That is going to cause a problem. One thing. Another thing, and I watched the video from 2 weeks ago, and I know what the book said the bank traffic would be. The bank never had that traffic.
We only provided...
We all know that. We all live here.
Comparison.
There was never an ATM where someone would use the bank for. That was it. So if there were 5 cars in the parking lot at any given time, there was a lot for that bank. We all live in town. We all know that.
Yep.
So now a restaurant's going to add a whole new dynamic to Black Rock Turnpike. And we could see this little pub. We have people parking in Wells Fargo and walking across Stilson. We can see this in Barcelona, where they're parking across the street at the plant factory and walking across. And I said, someone's going to get hit on Black Rock Turnpike one night. It's just nobody can see you. It's going to happen. We're going to see, I can see us seeing the same thing here, where you said you don't want parking in the parking lot where that Donut Inn is or where the liquor store is.
Yes.
We're going to see overflow parking in that parking lot.
Potentially, unless the owner doesn't...
We know we're going to see, and I'm sure Mary's hoping for that too, because then she's going to be busy.
True.
So, I know your traffic counts they're very good, they're very thorough, but just by living in town and experiencing what we experience on Black Rock Turnpike, I just do not understand how the book numbers and real life into play here. I just don't see it.
Okay, just for clarification, as far as...
And you were very good 2 weeks ago, I must say. Last week, Attorney Fallon. I was watching you. Go ahead.
The numbers you don't believe, are you talking about the bank numbers or the restaurant numbers?
The bank numbers.
Those are
We're
just
trying to use the
provided for
restaurant
comparison.
numbers based on the bank numbers and saying, well, for a little bit more, we're gonna see this. But what we're experiencing every day on Black Rock Turnpike, with the bank being closed, I think, for 4 years now,
Right.
and we're trying to use bank numbers based on a count of 45 or 50, whatever it was, but we've never even seen that.
The
Go ahead.
bank numbers were only provided for a comparison.
Yes,
The traffic
I
study we
understand.
provided here, this one,
Yes.
is restaurant numbers only, nothing more.
I thought it was compared to the bank. We were using it as a comparison with the restaurant. What we would see as a bank and then what we would see as a restaurant.
Right, but we
But
analyzed
as a
just
bank, we've seen
restaurant.
nothing. That's what I'm trying to say.
It's vacant.
We've seen nothing. So we can't say, well, we had this many on the bank, and, Black Rock Turnpike has been like this based on these numbers for the bank. When we haven't had anything. Now we're just
But keep in
influxing
mind,
everything.
When this commission, us and DOT reviewed and approved a bank,
Right.
it was based on those higher numbers,
I understand that.
which never materialized.
With 4 lanes of traffic. With 4 lanes of traffic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
I just don't think the state would come back and say, no left turn.
Well, I have
This
to,
commission-
with all due respect to that, I'm on the study for the Black Rock Turnpike study, and there's been talk of an island
Correct.
going down Black Rock Turnpike.
Yeah, well, in the lower section.
Yeah, but they don't know where yet. And taking away curb cuts, and, I mean, it's still up in the air what's gonna happen.
I do know about that.
Yeah, so that would just force everybody right anyway, if that was to happen potentially in that area.
But if you were to have a median down Black Rock Turnpike, which was a discussion a while ago.
Right.
There was some discussion and provision for a way for that traffic from that side of the road to somehow make a U-turn. I'm not going to suggest a New Jersey jug handle.
Yeah, I know.
But, I know this is not New Jersey, but.
No, I get it.
But there was that was part of the discussion.
Right. No, I understand.
Yeah. Not saying it'll be built.
It goes, I think it goes from Sam Water to Kings Highway or something like that, doesn't it? Or where the study, Tungus, from Tungus to Sam Water, I think is where the study's going, yeah.
Quick
I'm not sure
question.
what's happening right now on that, but.
Okay.
Mr. Galante.
Commissioner Noonan.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
There are traffic lights that are on opposite, I mean, when you're in the driveway, on either side, you go right or left, there are traffic lights.
Yep.
How does that help?
Well, it
first-
helps to some degree because it creates gaps in the traffic flow on Black Rock Turnpike itself. You know, the whole idea of the traffic signals on Black Rock is to have them work together.
And, well, I guess that's my next question is, are they timed that way?
They're supposed to be timed that way. What leading up to is they're not always exactly in sync. It depends on the traffic coming out of the side roads. Depending on when those lights turn red and green, it creates gaps on Black Rock Turnpike for driveways. So, to answer your question, there are gaps.
Okay.
Okay?
Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Galante? Okay, thank you very much.
So, one of my favorite movies is E.T., and there was a scene in E.T. where the older brother was talking to the younger brother, and the younger brother was saying something, and the older brother took to him, and he turned to him and he said, "This is reality, Greg." So I'd like to talk a little bit about reality as we bring this hearing to a close. I handed out the last time, so you don't have to fumble for it. I'm going to do it again.
Can you just give him the stack and we'll pass it around? No, please just give him the stack. Thank you.
But what I want to do, and I also provided you in the charging record, you'll have it in your work session, a colored version of the site plan as showing the area of the zone change. The total area that we are seeking a change of zone on this 68,000 square feet parcel is 6,348 square feet. We are asking for an increase in the commercially zoned portion of the property, which is currently 22,916 feet, to 29,264 square feet, an increase in the commercial lot area of 6.5%. And as is well pointed out on the colored map which you have, it basically encompasses this little L-shaped strip here, which, as I will discuss, would accommodate more parking. So I think it's important when we're looking at this application and reality, this is not an application where somebody is coming to you, flying in the face of your plan of conservation and development and saying, you see this parcel here, this 98,214 square foot parcel that's all residentially zoned, I want to make it commercial. We have a 98,000 square foot parcel, of which 22,000 is currently zoned commercial. We want to add approximately 6,300 square feet of commercial space. It is a discrete zone change. More importantly, left undisturbed will be this entire area of 69,214 square feet. That's over an acre and a half of property that is residentially zoned and is restricted in perpetuity under a conservation easement that it cannot be disturbed.
Can I ask you a question about that? So one of the factors, as you know, is that time and experience indicates the need for a zone change, right? I mean, you know, a significant factor in our analysis is that there's a need for the change. What is it about our time and experience in this town and for this commission that indicates a need for this change?
I'll address that, and if I don't answer it in the course of my remarks, you can call me on it and come back to it.
Very good.
Can I ask about, though, this lot, this 63 square foot, how much, I think we asked this and I either forgot, or how much are you pushing the retaining wall back to the north end, I guess? Do you know?
Sure. In other words, if the zone change were granted, how far back would the retaining wall be moved to the north?
I did a little calculation here while we were just talking with the scale and a piece of paper. It looks to me like on the south side of the lot, it would move the stone wall about 42 feet back. It looks like on the north side, the east side, that it would move the stone wall about 50 feet back, and on the north side, about 35 feet.
Northeast corner.
Northeast corner. That's back of the napkin here with a piece of paper and the scale measuring.
Would you say the north side, Chairman? was?
Yeah.
Would you say the north side was?
35, looks like to me.
So the south side being Black Rock Turnpike?
Put that right into that
So
wall.
here.
Yeah, thank you.
So if
It's important to, as we do that, and we verify the numbers, I think it's important to keep in mind, though, too, just for context, that the retaining wall, where it's presently located, is not located on the zone.
No, and
That's fair, yeah.
And so, while you would be within your rights to move that wall, probably, 5-10 feet here, and maybe about 15 feet in the northern corner, and maybe even a little bit more as you get closer to Black Rock Turnpike. Yeah, but as
We calculated at approximately 30 feet movement of the wall, okay?
It's not a straight line, too.
No.
It's not a straight line, so it varies.
I calculated it at the far corner here. Yeah, no, not worst case scenario. I just took this area here, this one here, this corner.
This is
I took
30 feet right here.
this corner here, and I took this corner here.
Right, so this is about 30 feet over here, this is probably about 30 feet here, and this is maybe about 40.
Okay. See that? So, all right.
So,
May I ask a question about the
Yeah.
open space there? There is no access to this. I went on Steiner Street and I was trying to walk through to get a depth perception. I can't.
yeah, there's no public access to it. It's very much buffered open space. So I hope that's answered that question. But the
Commissioner
point
Noonan, you good?
Yes, thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Newman. The point I keep coming back to is the wall, just again, as I said for context, is not currently located on the zone line. And since we're focusing here quite properly on a zone change application, I just want to emphasize for starters that our zone change here is 6,348 square feet. We're increasing the commercial area of the lot, which is presently 22,916 feet, to 29,264 feet, an increase of 6.5%. So when I talk about looking at this in terms of reality, I start with that. The other thing I wanted to point out, and I will address more directly in a minute, if you look at the map here, this is the restaurant. Now, we're not proposing any exterior or any changes or expansion to the current building. We are looking to expand the parking by 12 spaces. But the distance, if you scale these to these homes, range somewhere in the neighborhood of about 175 to 350 feet in this perimeter. If you get beyond up here, we didn't calculate. So the buffer is absolutely very meaningful. And we've also submitted photographs. We have two things we'll leave for you for the record. This is a map showing the location of the photographs that we took and the direction in which the shots are placed. And what I think is important to keep in mind here is these shots here, if I can approach, were taken at the top during fall conditions, because we didn't want to be misleading. These were taken during spring-like conditions. And as you can see, and it gives some context to that overall buffer, there is, not only is this residentially zoned and under conservation easement, it is substantially wooded. These are photographs taken from the street, various locations in Simon Street, and they're noted on the map as well. This is a heavily forested area with a great deal of vegetation, which provides a visual and I would say substantial sound type buffer, and I'll address that in a second. So as I start this summary, I just would hope, there's been a lot of conversation here about zone change and changing the zone and expansion of commercial use. The only expansion of commercial use that we're making here or requesting you to authorize is 12 parking spaces. And that's what the 6,348 square feet will accommodate. Mr. Alessi, you have a question?
Attorney Fowler, you have 22,916 square feet of commercial space, right?
Correct.
You're proposing 29,264.
Correct.
That's an increase in commercial space of 27%.
Almost 28.
That's not 6.34.
It's 6.5% of the total lot area.
But
If you look
that's
at,
including commercial and residential.
yeah, it's 90, that's at the bottom.
But, excuse me, you're increasing your commercial space by 28%. I think you're misleading the facts when you keep on saying 6.5%. You're not. You're increasing it by 27 and change percent.
Well, I apologize if you notice what I put highlighted in black here, I think it's pretty clear. 6.
Increase in commercial lot area.
Yeah, by 6.5% of the entire.
No, but.
Of the 98,000.
Yeah, well, that's right there.
No, it says 6.5%
Yeah, but
increase in
I see.
commercial lot area, not in total lot area for commercial.
Well, my fault, if you look at the highlighted dark portion, I certainly wasn't trying to mislead you. I was trying to imply that 6,300 some odd square feet is such.
Yes, but you're basing that on a total of 98,478 square feet, which is the total lot of residential and commercial.
I think that's what it says, but I.
No, it says equals 6.5% increase in commercial lot area.
Well, that's what it does, because it's going to increase by it's going to increase the total lot area's commercial component by 6.5%.
Except that one can, and I agree with Commissioner Alessi, if I'm looking at this at 22,916, and I'm seeing a 28% increase in the commercial lot of the 22,916 that number is going to increase.
That's not disputed. I mean, the number speaks for itself.
Okay.
But the number at the reason I highlighted at the bottom was to highlight how I arrived at this. But Mr. Alessi, I'm not trying to confuse you.
Yeah.
You're right. I'm right. Everybody's right. It's an increase. We are.
Okay.
It's an increase.
Well, there are different ways to present the calculations,
It's an
okay?
increase.
And
It's an
if you
increase
take
of
the entire lot-
6.5% of the lot, total lot area to commercial use.
We're changing the total lot, 6.5% more to commercial.
Right.
Yes, but we are adding 30%, 28% more commercial to the...
To yield 12 additional parking spaces, and I'll speak to that in a second. But we're not proposing any changes to the...
No, please.
Please. We could build 30, I've gone through that before, and I want to keep my marks directed to you, and I will address that.
thank you. Yeah.
You could also make the argument that you're decreasing the residential percentage by 6,
I
right?
am.
Okay, sure. Just checking.
You know, I am, by the same, turn the numbers around. But the point I'm trying to make, apparently not very well, is that it is not a situation, as I think is contemplated by your plan of conservation and development, where there's a request to take residentially zoned property in a significant way and convert it to commercial use. This is a unique situation where there's already commercial use established, and you have a substantial buffer of over 1.5 acres that's undisturbed. That leads to addressing the questions with regard to the impact on property values. The same arguments that I just made would be my arguments with reference to refuting a claim of diminution in property values. And if one picture speaks 1,000 words, then I will look at the Google map and suggest to you that the conversion of this existing commercial building to a restaurant use with this buffer remaining intact is not going to have any impact on these properties hundreds of feet away. Noise. Not only is there the question of our vision for this restaurant as a family restaurant, as Mary testified to it, but there is no proposal here for outdoor dining of any kind. And for this record, I would state that if the commission approves this application, they can establish, based upon this offered condition of approval, a condition of approval that no outdoor dining will ever be sought for establishment at this location. So if the issue here is quiet enjoyment of the property by the neighbors, in addition to everything else I said, the buffers, we would agree never to seek a request for seasonal outdoor dining. Odors, we have a state-of-the-art system that's been reviewed by your health department, your engineering department. There will be no odors associated with this restaurant. That would violate code, and your health department wouldn't allow it, and we built that into the system. There were some comments in a couple of letters today about water quality. Well, suffice it to say that this application has been reviewed and approved by the Inland Wetlands Agency, the conservation staff, and your own town engineering department. All aspects of water quality and water retention and water management, state-of-the-art, in accordance with the town regulations of the town of Fairfield, are going to be enforced on this property. So there's no issue of any mitigation or any off-site migration of water that would have any adverse impact on the Samp Motor Lake or anything else. Now let's talk about the restaurant itself, which gets hopefully to addressing the commissioner's question and a few others. I think we all, I tried to get reality, if I was successful, on the zone change. It is a discrete zone change. It's 6,348 square feet. It allows us to establish a restaurant. Restaurants are permitted uses in the zone, section 12.4.17. I've given you a list of all the restaurants within 3/4 of a mile. There's been statements today that I may have been conservative, that we may have 35 restaurants. So I have to go back and count. All within about a mile. So restaurants are a permitted and regular use in this district. And so this application, I would respectfully submit to you, is not about whether or not we can establish a restaurant at this location. It really is focused on whether or not that restaurant should have 30 spaces, which we could accommodate without the zone change, or 42 spaces, which is what the site plan that's in front of you tonight seeks. Or said another way, whether this restaurant will have a patron floor area of 1,680 square feet or 1,200 square feet. If you reduce the patron floor area, if we abandon the zone change and came back in here with a compliant application with 30 parking spaces on the existing commercial property, yielding a patron floor area of 1,200 square feet, one, as I've said to you before, based upon Mary's calculations and Jake's calculations, it would be very difficult for them to succeed with the restaurant as their pleasant vision is planned. But I can tell you, having represented restaurateurs, not Mary and Jake, for over 40 years, I know how a successful restaurateur could make that scenario work. You just take that patron floor area and change your vision a little bit. Family style, I don't think so. Those tables, those booths, we don't need all of those. We'll expand the bar area. That's where the money is. And when you look at our floor plan, it bears confirmation of Mary's vision. It's a restaurant, a sit-down restaurant, a place where you can go with family. I mentioned Colony Grill, similar. But if you want to make a 30 parking space, 1,200 square foot restaurant work at this location. You just got to change the concept and change the floor plan. And I don't think that's what anybody wants. And the irony is, that would be more likely to yield the very results that the neighbors or the people who have at least spoken are worried about than what we propose to do. Mike's already talked about traffic. I'm not going to be redundant about that. The traffic during our peak hours, if traffic is the issue, is less than a lot of other uses. You know, we focused on the bank and we focused on restaurants. But this property is located in the design commercial district. And I don't have to tell you, the commissioners, there's a plethora of other uses that this site could be put to. And I would suggest to you many of them would have significantly greater peak hour impacts than our restaurant, which is going to be busiest during the non-peak hours. And as Mike's testified to and the chair talked about, the reduction in patron floor area is not going to reduce traffic volumes. And if you follow my hardcore scenario about changing the vision for the restaurant and turning it into more of a bar, it could actually ironically increase traffic. The owner's not going to consent to an agreement. We've been down that road for over a decade, nor really should he, because of the things that Mike mentioned, as far as the impact on his property, add traffic. That's a very busy center, the Whitebird Center. You know, there was a letter, too, that you got about somebody saying that they had to deal with all the noise and everything and the traffic from the Whitebird Center. Huh? Okay. So where does it come in that somehow we're coming into a pastoral location here and bringing commercial use to this residential area, which, by the way, is buffered by 1.5 acres of conservation restricted property? On the right-hand turn restriction, for the reasons Mike stated, his analysis, we don't think it's a great idea, but we'd certainly abide by a condition of approval should you feel fit to impose it with regard to that. So what's changed, okay? Getting back to that. What's time and experience have changed? This is a failed site, okay? We established, this has had a long history, as many people have said to you. There was an application for a medical office building that was denied. The bank was approved, and the bank has the property has sat vacant for about 4 years. The bank failed, but more importantly to the chair's question, nothing's happened here for 4 years, okay? I don't want to see this site, which I've been involved in unsuccessfully and successfully over the last 12 years.
Yeah. And so question there. Yeah. I mean, listen, you know, it keeps giving you work. I mean, if we make it successful, you know, we might not see you again.
I'm getting old. I'm getting old, and more importantly, I've gotten to know Mary and Jake.
So
and I'd like to get one more win on this site for them. But let me just...
So there was a question there.
Yeah,
and
but just let me finish my thought.
Yep.
I don't want this to become the next 5 years Hatfield Market, okay? This is an important location in one of the most prime commercial arteries in our town. Something should happen here. Something good, something exciting, something vibrant, something local. So I think what's changed, and where, you know, you have the greatest discretion. You don't have to be told this by me when it comes to zone changes. I know that. You know that. But if you want to know what time, circumstances, considerations warrant this zone change of 6,300 square feet, I would say to you the fact that it's sat vacant here for 4 years. Not just restaurants. This property is owned by a very well-regarded, aggressive in the best sense of the word, developer. He's not been able to move it. And that's not good. And the thing that's particularly ironic about it is it's a beautiful building. It's a nice looking building. As one gentleman said, it looks like a restaurant. But to answer your question, that's my answer.
So, somebody mentioned earlier, prior applications to rezone either portions or some aspect of the property. I've been here a while now, before my time. What is the history of the zoning on the property? Have there been applications to rezone that have been denied?
I'm aware of 2 applications that I was involved in. There was an application made a long time ago, to construct a medical office at this location. 2006, sounds about right. I did. And I
Okay,
lost.
sir, thank you very much.
And my recollection is it was for a slightly larger, or somewhat larger zone change area. It was denied. Then, 2 years later, here's my assistant, it came in, and we made the application to the bank.
For the bank.
And that's what was approved.
No zone change there?
Well, there was no zone change.
It was just the,
Correct.
the available space fit the criteria.
Correct, because it's always been a split zone. And here we are. So,
And prior to the bank, what was there?
Dr.
The vet,
Ratner's
the vet, right, the
office
vet.
was there for many years, and a house, I think, too. Ratner and the vet. So that's my answer on the time issue. But I think where I would kind of wrap up, because it's late and you guys have heard it all before, and I talk too much. But I do believe in this application. I've never come to you, or at least I'd never advise a client to come to you, to seek an aggressive zone change in a residential area. Because I don't think that's great, but more importantly than that, I know you're not going to buy it. It's right in your plan of conservation and development. But when somebody comes to me on Black Rock Turnpike in the Design Commercial District at a commercially zoned site and wants to establish the kind of restaurant that you've heard about in the course of these proceedings, run by these folks here, and to make it work, working with Mary and Jake and this team, we need a 6,300 square foot zone change so that we can add 12 parking spaces to make sure it's successful. This little L right here.
Yep, we got it.
You got it. To me, that's worthy to bring to you. Because we are living in difficult times in the state of Connecticut. Fairfield is not immune from those times. We have done a great job, and this commission has been in the forefront of it, of staying ahead of the curve in terms of the vibrancy of our commercial districts, whether it's the downtown center or all the work you're working on Commerce Drive. But we can't forget Black Rock Turnpike. And I understand, as Mr. Alessi mentioned, we're looking at traffic issues on Black Rock Turnpike. We're not alone there. Most communities have commercial arteries that are important to the vitality of the town, but carry with them traffic challenges, which again, typical of Fairfield, we're trying to address. But there's nothing in the traffic documentation here that would support a denial of this application, especially when it's a permitted use in the zone, leaving aside the zone change, and surrounded by 30 other restaurants. The fact of the matter is, the restaurant use here will be busiest during non-peak hours, so that it will not stress Black Rock Turnpike during its most challenging times. At the end of the day, it will get this site up and running with a family-oriented restaurant business. The integrity of the zone will be maintained by over 1.75 acres of buffered open space, and the deserved protection of this neighborhood will be maintained. And at the end of the day, I will predict to you, it will, or could, or hopefully will not be like Stratfield Market. If this restaurant is running under Mary and Jake's operation, within 2 or 3 years, everybody here will be going to it. But if it sits and deteriorates for another 3 or 4 years to the detriment of the Black Rock Turnpike commercial area and the residential neighborhood, we'll all be reading letters to the editor. This is an opportunity to take this site and with a discrete zone change, allow it to succeed and provide the kind of family restaurant experience that the town needs. And I thank you.
I have a question.
Commissioner McAleese.
But we hear family. What's to prevent this? You got 19 seats at a bar in the plan. 19, that doesn't mean, it doesn't say family. So I mean, for me to base my decision on this being a family-oriented restaurant, is it going to close at 9 o'clock after the last dinner? No, we know they're going to stay open late. So the things the neighbors all complain about are there. How do we get past the noise, the light? I mean, how is that different from the scenario you pointed out where nothing happens and a biker bar moves in or whatever?
Well, the point
I know, by the way, once we rezone it, if the restaurant doesn't succeed, then it's rezoned. And
You
a
have
bar,
another-
and a bar, just like you just suggested, could come in anyway.
I'll answer both, okay? First, Mr. McAleese, your question. The emphasis on the family orientation of this business plan is because it happens to be true. That's the kind of place that Mary and Jake want to run. To take your point more to the zoning though, a restaurant use, including the service of alcohol, is a permitted use under your zoning regulations in this zone.
Sure.
So nobody's trying to play a shell game.
No, I didn't.
We're only, I know
Hang
that.
on just a second. But you still didn't answer the question on family. So what does that mean?
What
When I see
the best
19 at the bar, I don't think family restaurant. And
Well, I've mentioned a number of times, and they're probably happy with the publicity, I guess, the Colony Grill. That's the kind of place we envision running,
I
okay?
don't go there, so I really.
Go there, see, take a look at it. But that's our business plan. But to answer your question more directly, about, well, how can you be sure it will be a family restaurant? Well, we expect it will, because that's how we're gonna run it, but at the end of the day, 2 things. One, it's permitted use in your zone, and number 2, I've already offered and suggested 2 things that are meaningful to your concerns about protecting the neighbors, which you should be concerned about doing on every application. One, this, 1.5 acres of buffered, residentially zoned, conservation easement, restricted property. And number 2, a stipulated condition of approval, there will be no outdoor dining, period, on the site, ever. Condition of approval offered by the applicant. Runs with the land.
No, and that's, I don't know how we would run it with the land, because your
Well, it'd be a
applicant,
condition of the special permit
yeah, the special.
for
this-
a restaurant.
this
And then to
special
answer
permit.
your question.
There's no way there could be outdoor dining on this site. You're already trying to get as many parking spaces as you need for the floor area that you have in the building. I mean, there's...
But there
there's
won't
no-
be any outdoor dining on the site. Well,
They're not
the
gonna
people
go
can
in a
be
parking
creative.
spot, is what he's trying to say.
Well, how could they?
No, that's what
They're
I'm saying.
42. They've got just the amount of parking
And,
spaces
Mr.
they
Chairman,
need for,
you
you
had
know...
a specific question, a
however
little
many
different than Mr. McAleese's, because I don't want to, what was your question?
No, mine was, his related to, the push to approve the zone change is in many ways grounded in the special permit application and the intention of the applicant for the particular style of restaurant and so forth. And so, he was asking you about that. And my point on top of that was, yes, but the zone change is a zone change. And so if she decided to do something different, she's entitled to do that. And if she wants to move out and go somewhere else, she's entitled to do that. And if somebody else comes in, they can do something completely different.
I think that would be a huge issue if we were asking you to change the zone on a substantial piece of property or a substantial portion of the construction.
I got it.
The point that you would weigh there against the points that I made would be how much intrinsic benefit is there in the additional 6,300 square feet? And is it worth taking that chance to affect this restaurant at this location, get this facility up and running, get this building occupied, allowing it to be viable? So, and allowing it to be viable in a zone where restaurants are permitted and where we have so many of them. And it's awful hard to
Bless you.
imagine why this restaurant, whether it's family-oriented or not, and in this case, we expect it will be, should be treated any differently, absent the zone change, which you've got to consider, than all these other restaurants that I gave you in the last proceeding. And if you agree that, hey, yeah, restaurants are not only permitted uses in this zone, but they're consistent with the zone, and I got a piece of property here that's been vacant for over 4 years, and it's 6,300 square feet, and I got this acre and a half, I hope you'll approve it, because it makes sense, it is unique, and it will be good for not only the town as a whole, but believe me, it'll be good for this specific neighborhood, because it's not good to have a building like this vacant for so long. I appreciate your time and your attention and your patience.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. No. So the public, sorry, before I close here, we have one more question from Commissioner Noonan, and then I'll answer your question.
The petition put forth and the two-thirds.
Mr. Went and I will examine it as we always do.
Fair enough.
If it's verified and indeed accomplishes Dr. Goodkind says, then you're bound by statute 5.2. But we will want to review that petition with staff.
Staff will. Thank you.
Thank you,
Commissioner Frank.
And the hours will be the state liquor hours of 2 a.m.?
There's a legal issue there because there's case law that says that the commissions, zoning commissions can't regulate hours of operations of a restaurant because that infringes on the state. So technically, so as not to mislead, the answer would be, I suppose we could be. Our expectation is we probably won't be, not because we're, whatever, but because it probably won't make business sense for us to stay up to that hour, but.
Most kids are in bed by then.
That's right. And the games are over.
Yeah. So,
even the Yankee game,
all right.
where they won tonight.
Are we good? Any other questions? All right, thank you. So, the applicant has now concluded their rebuttal. We had our public comment period, so the public hearing is closed, okay? And their meeting is adjourned.
Dan, did you want this?